Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast, RPG Site's weekly podcast. I'm your host, Brian Vitale. Joining me, we have Josh Torres.
Back to the cooldown period.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
I've been getting so many appointments for Anime Expo started. Doesn't feel like I'm resting.
And Chowman Wu.
Don't worry, my friend already secured me Persona shirts. I told her, just buy me other shirts.
T-shirts.
Get you the $45 Persona 6 logo shirt.
Well, maybe.
No, I was at the Sega pop-up shop in Little Tokyo yesterday, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't have the gall to sell that there.
What?
There's definitely $45 shirts there.
They should have had it, and you should have bought one for everyone in this podcast.
I did like your photo of the three portraits, and it was like Persona 4 protagonist, then Joker, and then Amy the Hedgehog, and Tony replied like, "Oh, Persona 6 taking some wild swings," and I'm like, I don't know.
That'd be awesome.
Tony DM'd me like a few hours later, and was like, "I did not realize that became a hit skeet," and I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah. No Mikhail this week. I presume he's sleeping, so we always appreciate when he can make time to come on in the middle of the night for him. But we'll check back with him next week. I'm looking at our outline for this week's episode, and it feels kind of good to have a normal, like, not pre, during, or post Summer Game, even though it is post Summer Game Fest still. To kind of have like a normal length list of a normal itinerary, so to speak, in terms of headlines, in terms of news. If anything, this episode focuses more on some more of those features that we were kind of talking about over the last couple of weeks, as folks like Adam Scott and others are writing up some of the previews for games they got to see or play at Summer Game Fest. So we'll shout out a few of those. But on the news front, it feels more like a normal week. On the game front, talking about game reviews or game we've been playing, Games Talk, as we kind of call it internally, section of the podcast, we are going to start out this episode with kind of the big release for this week, and that is The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales. So we had a review go up on the site by, let's see who wrote this for us. It was Hayes. We've had a few other people either finish the game or have started playing the game, so we'll talk about that first off. And then we have a few other cool preview opportunities. Josh is going to go speak at length on what he was able to go hands-on for Endless Ragnarok, which is releasing next month. And then we'll wrap up with a few other games that released in the relatively recent couple weeks, like Gothic 1. And we'll talk about some Steam Next Fest demos. So finally getting back to a little bit less of news and a little bit more about what we've been playing, what we've been thinking, a little bit more critique on that front. So starting out, Adam is going to lead the discussion here for Adventures of Elliot. Even though Hayes wrote the written review, you have also played through this game, and you've also wrote up some features for it. And others have either played the demo or have started playing the full release. So we'll kind of, we'll go back and forth about your thoughts and our thoughts and see where we align and where we misalign. So take it away, Adam, your thoughts on The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales.
Yeah, so Hayes wrote the review. So that's up on the site. And then I went through the game and I did a lot of like the tips and tricks walkthrough type articles for the site for people looking for, all the collectibles or trying to just want some guidance or whatever. But yeah, I have beaten the game twice actually. And I guess, how do I want to start with this? I'm just going to just heads up. I'm not going to be super kind to this game. I actually think it's not very good. And I don't want to sound whiny or whatnot. So let me just kind of like give the premise of the game and then kind of list the ways I don't think it works very well. So Adventures of Elliot is from Square Enix and developed by Claytek Works. So they're the team behind Bravely Default 2. And it's an HD 2D game, which they've used in numerous games now. Of course, Octopath, Triangle Strategy, Dragon Quest remakes. What sets this one apart is that it's an action RPG. Where all the other games were, turn-based or tactical RPGs in some way. This is action, so no menuing in terms of like battle menus and things like that. It's all, real-time, combat. And you play as the titular adventurer named Elliot, and you are basically in the world of, how do you pronounce this? The Fibidilia, something like that.
Firebird something.
Yeah, it actually means Firebirdia, but they kind of with a weird framing around it. But yeah, so and you basically are you play through the game, and people have made comparisons to The Legend of Zelda. For example, one of the things you pick up in the game is like a primary like way to power up in a way is a shard of life, which basically works exactly like a heart piece or a piece of heart in a Zelda game. Some people have made comparisons to like the mana series because you have various, specifically like Secret of Mana, where you have various like weapon types that you can use. Like you have a sword, you have a boomerang, you got a spear that you get, a hammer, those sorts of things. So that's kind of mana-ish. And then some people have made comparisons to like Ys in terms of just action combat, kind of top-down style, that sort of thing. So like classic Ys games, not a bump system though. So, and then the kind of the hook in the game's premise is that you're going through time. So shortly after the game's onset, you find a door to time and you are going backwards in time. The world, you're set in the kingdom of Huther, and the world is basically ravaged by what they call beastmen, and the kingdom that you're in is basically like kind of the last bastion against the beastmen, and it's being powered by like a magical barrier set up by the princess there. But for reasons, you go back to the past and kind of learn about the history of the world as you continually throughout the game kind of go further and further like backwards through the timeline. Like for example, you go back to like the Age of Reconstruction, which is kind of like almost like the Dark Ages, if you will, where society has fallen, people are kind of living within their means in like not really a city, but more just like a camp, like a tent, just a settlement, if you will.
Settlement,
and then, and back in the past even further, you're in the Age of Magic, which is like a big, thriving magic kingdom, and kind of has that whole feel where when you're in this kingdom, it's going to fall because you've seen what comes later. And then before that, it's like the Age of Budding, which is sort of like, more tribal to some degree, although there is a settlement there also. So I will start with what I think is the biggest criticism, or the biggest like glaring flaw of the game, which I think almost everyone I've seen agrees with, at least to some extent, is that you have the world map, right, that you're exploring through. There's different paths, there's different locations, there's different like shortcut tunnels between the different locations that you go through, different ruins that you can interact with, that are kind of like dungeons or mini dungeons or whatever. The problem is that the world that you're exploring in each of the 4 time periods, it's almost identical 4 times over. So you explore the world in like the first age, which is the Age of Safekeeping, and then when you go back in time to explore the Age of Reconstruction, it kind of feels like you're retracing your steps, because while there are like very small differences in maybe what the world looks like, or there's a couple of very minor paths that might be very, very slightly different, like this exit led to a chest before, but now this exit leads to nothing. It's still almost like 1-to-1 exactly the same. And then you go back in time to the third age, Age of Magic, and you do it again. And then you go to the fourth age and like you're doing it a 4th time, and it kind of wears on you at some point, which is like, I've already explored this. I really need to explore it again. I remember there was one area that you explore on the west side of the continent that kind of opens up later. It's like a volcano area. And, if you explore it once, it's fine. Like, okay, kind of, there's hot springs, there's fire, there's, a cool, like, there's a lava, like, volcano, ashy aesthetic. But then I'm kind of just thinking to myself in the back of my head, I'm going to have to explore this 3 more times after this. And it's just kind of a bummer that there's not a lot of, variety in the 3 ages. Now, to be clear, you don't have to fully explore the world 4 times over to, like, beat the game. You don't have to, in terms of like what key flags you need to actually like do to progress through the game and get to the ending. But I kind of feel like in these sorts of adventure-y, Zelda-y type games, if you want to collect all the items or get all the heart pieces or, get all the power-ups or whatever you kind of want to, it's just that it's not very fun to. So I think that that's on its face the most the part of the game that I think is the easiest to point out and say this isn't very good.
Even playing the demo, just in the prologue demo, even that, where you have a little bit of access to the first 2 ages, I was like, oh, I was expecting this to be a little bit different. Like, instead of having, and I think you're going to talk about it, where how certain locations appear on the world map in different ages and they're slightly altered. Like I wish there were more differences between the ages rather than like, oh look, this ruin is still here, only it's just slightly different. But it's in the same exact spot, and the path leading to it is basically the same, and the enemies leading to it are basically the same. And I haven't beaten the game, so I don't know like across the other two ages if it feels any different. But even in the demo, I was just feeling like, which is like what, 4-ish hours. I was feeling a little bit of the tedium within the first 4 hours. I'm like, that's not great to already be feeling that.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on this podcast even to some degree.
Yeah.
A couple other things about that, like there are different like dungeons in the game that you can go to. Like for example, one of the dungeons is called Grand Tree. It's a big tree that you go into. Now, how the dungeons work in the game is that in one of the ages, one of the four, it's a full length like dungeon, right? It kind of feels like a Zelda dungeon, maybe not as like puzzle heavy as like a Zelda dungeon would be, but it's like a full dungeon, takes, I don't know, half an hour to get through. There's a boss at the end. Some of them you have to do for progression, like to proceed through the game. And then in the other ages, that dungeon is still there, but it's like kind of a truncated version of it, which is, I guess, in one hand, good because you don't need to traverse through the whole dungeon 4 times over. But even so, it's kind of like, it kind of feels a bit pro forma, where it's like, oh, here's Grand Tree again. I've already been through here twice. I guess I better enter it a third time and see what's there. And you enter it, and it's like, you're kind of going through a similar puzzle again. It may not be exactly the same, but it's like you go through a similar puzzle to get a chest at the end. And then I think Cullen actually pointed this out in one of our play chats. He reviewed it for Nintendo Insider. A lot of times the chests in these, sometimes you get like a heart piece, but a lot of times it's like, oh boy, I got 100 gold or turtle or whatever it's called, the money. And it's just kind of like, was that worth it? I don't know.
I felt the same thing when I was going through my early experiences. I feel like it's playing the first Octopath, where your entire dungeon is a circular loop, and then you just go back and like, that was it? Is that
I'll talk about this later, but I've seen quite a few people kind of come away like this is the generous takeaway, I think, where it's like, well, hopefully Elliot is like Octopath 1, where it's a maybe not a good game in its own right, but a foundation for something better to come later. Now, of course, that's just like literally wishful thinking, right? Hopefully, but like, there are maybe like very core components to like the style or structure that I think you might be able to, work with. I just think the implementation in this game is kind of thin. So the repetitive world is a big part of this. And I also think the fact that like the game doesn't really do a whole lot with like the time traveling aspect of this is also kind of a bummer. I think we might have pointed out like if you blow up a bumble wall in the past, it stays open in the present. But that's like literally like the only thing that plays with this time travel kind of, aesthetic or idea at all. Like otherwise it's just kind of like it might as well be 4 different seasons or, 4 different whatever. It just they're all very similar.
I think in the story wise is like if you complete some of the side quests, it does have some influence
the quest
to the future, but like gameplay wise, not so much, right? So,
and like I'm thinking sort of like light world, dark world, and like Link to the Past. I think obviously that's only 2 worlds, and of course they're similar, right? But I think that plays a little bit more creatively with how those 2 worlds interact with each other in like a game like Link to the Past that I don't see here, right? Okay, another part of the game that I think is a kind of a big mark against it, at least to me, and again, I'm not trying to sound whiny, is I think the combat in the game is not. I think the combat itself is not bad in terms of like the action combat, how it feels to, in terms of controlling the different weapons and how you can use them with each other, and the magicite system that the game has and how you can like modify some of the properties to your boomerang or your sword, and how you can use them in combination because you can equip 2 weapons at once. The problem to me, I think, though, is that I feel like most of the combat in the game is kind of pointless. There's not a whole lot of reason to actually engage with the combat. In fact, I was playing through the game pre-release, and Brian was watching me, and I think Brian made a comment like, "You're just running by everything," and I'm like, "Yeah, there's not a whole lot of point to actually fighting these enemies." You get like small magicite chunks for defeating enemies, and I think a little bit of money, but you don't really need that at all. There's no EXP, so you're like, you don't need to fight for like levels or stats or anything. And one thing that I don't think I've seen anyone else mention, but I think is a part of this, I think this is going to sound a little bit like nutty maybe. I think the character sprites relative to the world around them are too small. Does that make sense? I think the character sprites are too small and the enemy sprites are too small. And that means that they are easy to avoid. They're easy to dodge. They're not in your way. You can pretty easily ignore enemies and get around them. Unlike, say, I was just playing Mina the Hollower. I know maybe a weird comparison, but like in those games, the enemies are like in your way. If you don't fight them, they are going to be annoying. And other Zelda games also you can throw in here. But in this game, I think the enemies are not very threatening. There's not a whole lot of reason to fight them. So I found myself most of the time, if it wasn't like one of those like monster rooms where you have to fight or a boss, I was just like running by them. And that was it. And it was just kind of like, I'm kind of ignoring a key component of the game because I don't see much reason to interact with it. Now, if I was playing on a harder difficulty, I kind of toggled between normal and hard. I didn't try the very hard mode. Maybe that's less viable. And I even said when we talked about the demo, like maybe this is the sort of game where if you want to get the most out of it, you want to play on like very hard. But just playing on like the more standard difficulties, yeah, I just kind of think, like I said, I feel like the combat is kind of pointless. There's not a whole lot of reason to engage with it. Which kind of feels
can I be like smooth brained for a moment?
Go for it.
So I'm playing through the game right now. I'm about halfway through, and half the reason I'm fighting enemies at all is because there's achievements for killing like 200 enemies with a spear, 200 enemies with a hammer, 100 enemies with bombs. I'm like, well, I guess I better start bombing some enemies because I need that little digital checkbox to be filled. But if you didn't care about that, or if you're playing on Switch where it doesn't even factor in, then even less, you're just going to run by things. So it's like
I feel like if they made that system like a reward incentive in the game, like you get a special magicite or something if you do that in-game achievement, and you get something really cool out of it. That could be like instead like just a system level trophy achievement, like make that like an in-game incentive, but like hey, you get something a new cool combat option.
Yeah. Like you unlock maybe like unlock like a spin attack or a second swing or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like no reason to engage with enemies. Or I don't want to be like absolute, like there's absolutely no reason, but there's little reason. And especially when you're like going through the same location like a fourth time and it's got the same enemies there, it's like I don't want to deal with those guys again. Okay, another thing. Throughout the game, throughout the world, you find these like in the main dungeons. These are there, but also there's all these like miniature shrines of life throughout the game. And these are kind of like miniature puzzles usually that you can go through, and they reward you with a heart piece or a shard of life, which is what they're called in this game. They're kind of like a shrine in like Breath of the Wild, in that sense, where it's like a mini, not even like a dungeon, just like a one puzzle that you can go through, get to the end, and get a heart piece. However, I feel like almost all of them are trivial. Like they're barely puzzles at all. And I don't want to say like, I don't want to sound like, again, whiny where there's like, they're way too easy, but they are way too easy. And I remember one of the puzzles, like I go into the shrine and Faye, who we'll talk about later, your fairy companion, was like, gosh, Elliot, this is going to be really difficult. And like by the time the voice line ended, I was basically at the end. So it's just like, I don't know. It's just kind of like,
it feels like the target audience of this is like a much younger.
Yes. That's actually what was my conclusion to this whole section was going to be. It's like, I feel like this is a game for like middle schoolers, which is not like a bad thing. It just kind of feels like that's not what I was expecting.
I was doing a shrine where one of the first things you unlock for Faye is the ability to like ignite enemies and light torches. And there's a couple shrines related to that. And you like it feels like on paper like a decent design. Like, okay, there's small catwalks and you can't see where is safe to go. So you need to light torches to reveal the path, and there's enemies trying to knock you off. Like that to me just seems like that's a perfectly fine setup for a puzzle. But just small decisions like you don't have to light all the torches to open the end of the room. Like if you get to the end and you've only lit half the torches, you're done. Like it doesn't matter. Like there's certain things like that where it's like, and also just the number of enemies that there are not challenging. So like I feel like idea could have worked fine. Is it going to blow your mind, or no? But it could have worked fine. But then they just made it too easy. They're like, there's 10 torches, you only got to light like 3 of them and make it to the end, and you're done. Good job. You get an upgrade to your torch ability.
I feel so conflicted in terms of like how this game is design and what I've seen and what I've like talked to you about at SGF, Adam, where a lot of these maybe non-issues to a younger audience, like if you're in middle school playing this game, it's like one of your first video games ever or whatnot. But the original Legend of Zelda and like stuff like A Link to the Past was also aimed at a younger audience, but the stage design and the puzzle design of them were definitely like they didn't handhold you in terms of like here's a checklist of what you need to do or what's in front of you. Like you experiment with the items in your inventory to find the solution. It wasn't like in your face. While a lot of modern game design sensibilities these days are very much they spell it out for you as long as you can read.
You know what game I played in middle school?
What's up?
Just one of them. The only game I played in middle school. Those actually let me double check the date. Those Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons. When did
I
those come
love
out?
those games.
Yes, I would have been in middle school. So I'm thinking like, all right, you know what pissed me off in middle school, but was challenging, and I was smart enough to figure it out. Jabu Jabu's Belly and Oracle of Ages.
Yes.
7th dungeon. It's a pain in the ass. But like they didn't dumb it down for me because like, oh, it's a game for middle schoolers. Like, no, that's a challenging dungeon. So I was gonna ask, like we talked about overworld. I don't know what you want to call it, tedium, repetitiveness. Like the dungeons or the interior areas or what they frame the combat in and around, Adam. Like how did you feel about that in Adventures of Elliot as you go into these like interior areas that are the proxy dungeons of this game, so to speak?
Well, like there are like some of the dungeons do have like pretty basic puzzles that are, I think, like for example, there's one dungeon later on where you have to. It's a very common puzzle where you have like a beam of light and you have to throw mirrors in the path to like get it to where it needs to go. Like very common puzzle, and it's like that one is I think okay, but I actually saw some people pointing this out on social media. One kind of component to all of this is I just talked about them briefly. The fairy will kind of make comments about like what to do almost all the time. A lot of people, even when the demo released, were talking about how the partner in the demo is the princess, but in the rest of the game it's the fairy. Just like doesn't shut up. There's an option in the menu. There is an option, but I've seen people mention, and I kind of agree that like you train. It's like talkative and reticent are the two options. And even if you set it to reticent, they still talk a lot. Like and
I actually don't mind it, but it's just like, I guess people just wears on you. Hey, did you know there's a? It's like, shut up.
It's literally like people kind of meme on this sort of stuff, like the partner that just tells you everything before you even do it. But this is that game in like actuality where the partner just tells you everything before you do it.
That sucks.
Yeah,
it does annoy me. Like for me, I'd like to like figure things out, even if it takes me 10 minutes. Like don't tell me the solution 30 seconds into what might be a 10-minute process for.
Although I don't think there's any puzzle in this game that will take 10 minutes.
That's what makes some games memorable for me, is that for me, the struggle of figuring it out and connecting the dots of what to do. And then when I do it, it feels really good because I felt like I solved that by myself. I was able to, get through it. No matter how long it took for me compared to like most other people, So for that, I just feels like you could have added like a turn off option. So talkative and reticent, you could have also put turn off. Like, what's the problem with that?
Sometimes with puzzles, like, and I'm speaking generally now, like I might not progress the puzzle because I'm still learning how it works. Like usually puzzles, when you boil them down, are basically math because you're flipping a switch or you're turning a wheel or you're slotting something, like, or it depends on the game, of course. But sometimes you might not be making progress, but you're like to the goal, but you're learning how it works. And then usually there's like an aha moment and you're like, oh, I understand how I need to do this. And then you progress and you're done. But I'm thinking of games like this another one that's just, maybe this is unfair to the game, but like Horizon Forbidden West or like the more recent Tomb Raider games where it's like, oh, maybe I should do something over there. I'm like, I'm figuring out, please just let me. I know I might not be progressing, and I know that you're paranoid about gamers like dropping the game because they can't figure it out, but please just let me figure it out. Because usually once you have that aha moment, you're like, all right, click, 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 you're done. And even if that's like Josh said, like at the 10-minute mark, that's fine. I don't know. That was my comment. I was just bouncing off Josh's idea there.
I didn't mention this before, but one other thing that was also kind of a bummer. I talked about combat. I think the combat itself is fine. Like, I'm not going to say it's amazing as like an action 2D game, but it's fine. I talked about how you can avoid most of the enemies though, because they're not very threatening, at least on normal difficulties. So it's like, okay, there are bosses, and I think some of the bosses have pretty cool, kind of ideas behind them. However, one again sort of disappointing thing with the bosses is that they actually do repeat some of the bosses that you fight multiple times. Like, for example, there's like this one that's like a mouse in like a kind of like a war armored car thing that you fight a few times. That werewolf thing that you fight in the demo, you fight versions of that like 3 times. And then there's like this like frog guy that you fight a few times. It's just like there's like not only is the like lots of other parts of the game repetitive, as we mentioned, it's like, oh, it's this guy again. In terms of like the boss design, which is always a little bit of a bummer.
Well, usually like I'm okay with some repeat, but there's like a threshold where at some point you're like, oh, another repeat. Okay, at this point,
yeah. Now I guess the story itself. I actually think the narrative is pretty plain up until the point where you get to the first ending of the game. There are 3 endings in the game. It's mostly just like Elliot, Adventure Man, is a helpful, friendly, polite guy that everyone likes. And you go through the world, you meet these different characters in the different settlements, and they, of course, give you exposition about like what the world state is at that point. You do some quests throughout the world. In the later ages, there's kind of some story lines that are more about like there's the human tribe and like Mews, which are like the beast people, and as you might expect, there's like tension between the races. Have you heard this before? And it's kind of like pretty plain up to that point where you get to the bad ending, where to me it almost feels like, I don't want to say there is no story, but it's just kind of like so basic that it's just kind of like, I guess that was a narrative. Weirdly, in the way this game is like paced in terms of like dialogue structure of the story and narrative and where the actual plot is, it actually comes all after that first ending that you get. So once you get to the first ending, that's where the story actually kind of really kicks up. In the back like last 2 hours of the game, it's very backloaded in that regard, very top heavy, or is that bottom heavy? End of the game. But then even at that point, I kind of feel like it has its moments. There are moments that I thought are like actually genuinely touching, but they're kind of like isolated in between the rest, which I don't think is kind of standard fare. It didn't really surprise me in any way. Not that it has to surprise me or else it's bad. It's just like, it's kind of well telegraphed. It's stuff I feel like I've kind of seen this before, and it's pretty expected. And then like, not to spoil anything, but the very, very end of the game, I kind of feel like actually doesn't kind of fit with the rest of the game. It kind of just kind of feels like a left turn. Not like a, break your like immersion or anything like that, any like meta ending or whatever. It just kind of feels like it was like tacked on because they needed an ending. But yeah, it's like, I don't think it's a strong point, even though there are some isolated moments that I think are nice.
I was reading I think it was Rebecca Valentine's review at Kotaku on this game, and the way she phrased the characters were like, Elliot, the adventurer who has never made a mistake in his life, or has never had like an evil thought in his life, and then Faye, a fairy who's never had a bad thought in her life. Just like how both characters are like, they don't make mistakes. If they do make mistakes, they tried their hardest. Very saccharine, very like very paper thin like flaws. Like there's no wrestling with moral concepts. No, you don't want a game to be like, not every game has to be deep and profound, but there's just almost there's nothing to latch on to. It's just like, I'm an adventurer and I help everyone I come across, and I'm a good guy, and I've always been a good guy, and I've never made a mistake. And do you kind of have the same feeling?
I forgot who put it this way. I think it was GameSpot's reviewer. This is harsh, but I see where they're coming from. GameSpot was like, The Adventures of Elliot is a good case, or makes a good case for silent protagonist. Like, I don't need Elliot to talk. So like he doesn't add a whole lot. Again, that's harsh, and I don't know if I like agree with that, like nailed it, but I think like, yeah, I see where he's coming from. But if you're wondering where the story is, it is kind of at the end.
I do think the like cool addition to the game is, in terms of like the overall, when you think about HD 2D games, is like you have that option to toggle it up, and like the art portraits that speak during dialogue interactions. Like, when I look back at like the Octopath games, like that would have been cool to see in those games. Not the and it being toggleable is good as well. Not just like, okay, if you don't like that, you can turn it off. But having them speak like that, because those are very beautiful characters.
Yeah, the art is great. That's like the one thing about the game I think is almost undeniable. Not to say that, you can't disagree, but I think the art, like the character portraits especially, are really well done. And that's something, I think I think I saw on social media people wondering or hoping like that'd be nice to see in another Octopath or whatever HD2D game is to have like the character portraits like that.
Yeah, I think Final Fantasy Resonance also doing that as well.
Yep. So I think that touches on most components of the game. It's about a 20-hour game, so it's not a big commitment if you want to play through it. I just will this game have staying power? I don't think so. And like I said earlier, and other people have made this point, maybe this is like a good foundation, like the core of it in terms of the core idea, the core concept of this 2D HD 2D action RPG with Elliot. Like you could make a sequel to this game. Like I think you could easily have Elliot go on another adventure, right? And maybe they could tune it up in terms of world variety or puzzle, complexity or dungeon design. And even, of course, maybe more interesting narrative twists or what have you. And I'm not saying a good narrative has to be twisty, but it has to have like some sort of intrigue. So like it could be a good foundation for something that comes later. Now, but I don't really want to talk about like what comes next because I feel like we spend too much time on what comes next. I want to talk about what comes now. Like what is this? And I just don't think this game. I don't think it's bad. Like I don't think it's outright poor. And Hayes said the same in his review. I think Hayes is a little bit higher on the combat than me. He scored it a 7 out of 10 if you care about numbers, but he talks about a lot of these similar things. I just kind of think it's mixed. It's kind of like missing the juice that makes it more memorable and appealing. So,
were there was the OST anything to write home about either?
Music is great. I actually think overall the music is really good.
Okay,
Josh, you should play it in Japanese voices. It has like the most AAA cast ever.
Does it? I played the demo for a little bit in English. I don't know if I'm gonna just restart it.
You got the king voiced by Theo. You got Stalin voiced by Suabe, and you also got the princess voiced by Minaka Iwami.
Okay. Well, who's voicing the fairy? Because you're gonna hear them a lot throughout the game.
A child voice actress. It's like unknown. It literally sounds like a child.
I actually think in English, Faye's voice actress, I don't think is a child, but I think has like kind of the affectation of like a childlike voice. And like the way they like, emphasize certain words or whatever, like it comes across as like this is a child. Like I think that seems very intentional.
I dislike Faye's English voice actress, not because I think the voice work is bad, just more that I don't like the direction of the character. Like whoever meant to voice an obnoxiously talkative fairy, they did a great job at that, and I don't like their voice. Like great job to the actress, bad character voice. If that delineation makes sense.
It's like one of those things. It's like a lose-lose situation where like because of the premise of this character, it's hard to like have a voice that you can appreciate because of the way that this character is integrated into the game.
I don't really hate Faye's Japanese voice. It's just like it's literally like a kid that's very curious like about everything. It's like, oh, Elliot, why are you doing this? Elliot, why? It's like
that get annoying to me. I get it, but I know. I get
but it's like a kid asking you a question. Like
I don't want to hear a kid talking to me like that.
Yeah, but imagine you having a daughter asking you, it's like, hey, why did you do this? It's like Elliot just kind of like.
No, I'm putting on my earplugs. I'm putting on the mute. And I want just to hear the OST. Shut up, kid.
Worst baby. It's like Josh Torres, worst babysitter ever.
That's right.
Yeah, and again, I hope I didn't come across like I was whining. And maybe you'll love this game. Maybe you'll love like the simplicity of it. That it's it's a very casual playthrough. It's got a charming look to it. The art style, like the HD2D with the character portraits and whatnot. Very breezy game. So maybe that's what you're in the mood for. I just kind of wish there was like more to it.
Yeah, it's sounding like I'll just pick this up on a discount because we already have like enough games to worry about. Games to worry about. So maybe I'll just like wait for a decent discount on this and slot it in whenever I get time to do it. But also, we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, and it seems like a good chunk of people are just having like weird performance issues with this game, even though it's not a very graphically demanding game, but there's just like this weird stuttering that a good chunk of people are facing too.
Oh yeah, I had the stuttering. I hadn't mentioned that.
Yeah, Mikhail put up a feature across, all versions of the game, focusing on like PS5, PS5 Pro, the PC handhelds, Switch and PC, and it's basically said that stuttering is really only is prevalent in every version of the game except it's the best handled on PS5 Pro and PC. Says it's like a heavier game to run than most other HD2D games, but for reasons that are not quite clear. Also, just a personal anecdote. Adam did not run into this, but I did. For whatever reason, I have a 4K monitor, and I'm like, I can play this at 4K 60. Like, that's fine. I don't need to run it at 200 FPS or whatever. But it defaulted to like 720p, and I could not change it like in the menu. Even if I was full screen, and I was like, "What in the world's going on?" And I went to the Steam forums, and a lot of other people were having similar issues, and I was not able to diagnose it completely. But some people said, like, if you ever play it on a Steam Deck, it doesn't support 16 by 10, so it goes to 720p on a Steam Deck. I presume with like the letterboxing, uh, and I had to like edit an INI file to basically force it to be the resolution that I wanted, which I'm always willing to do. Like once you know where to
Shouldn't
do
have to,
that,
though.
that takes 2 minutes. But yeah, it's one of those things where like, why do I have to do this? Why can't I just select this from a menu?
That's weird, and I said this to you. I said this to you, in person or not in person, but before. Like I didn't have to do that for some reason. Not saying that your experience is wrong, but it's like it's very weird that you couldn't change the resolution.
And the time it took for me to fix it, which is 10 minutes total, people said it had something to do either with big picture mode or you ran the game on a Steam Deck and it remembered your Steam Deck settings. So then when you run it on a PC with Steam Cloud, that's what people were surmising, and I might be missing some details because I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go to the INI file, fix the resolution, and call
Forget
it
about
good.
it.
But yeah, and also just how the way the game looks with like the 2D pixel characters in like a 3D environment. Sometimes the 3D environments look good, but sometimes they almost look. This is gonna sound strange, like the I this is where my lack of specific knowledge on like technical aspects is gonna shine through. But even though like the objects in the world are rendering at a high resolution, like the textures on them are low resolution, which I think might be stylistic. Like if I'm looking at like a block of ice or like a stone pillar, the textures on the stone pillar, I can count the individual like color pixels.
Oh yes, I noticed this too. I kind of figured this was stylistic, but that's what it
I
looks like.
think it's stylistic, but it's kind of distracting. Where it's just like, oh, okay, I can tell that this tile that I'm standing on has 50 pixels across and 50 pixels down, and see the different coloring in that. Even though the resolution on my monitor for that size object is much higher than that. And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like, I think when I think of, like, I don't know, similar games that have sprites based on a 3D overworld, like old, Legend of Hero sorry, Trails titles, I thought they looked better when they're, like, up-resed on, like, P3 ports and things like that, but that might just be a personal preference. I think the pixel art outside of the environments looks fine, and like you said, the character art looks really, really good. I guess the last thing to call out is that we mentioned it in passing, but we have the review up from the site from Hayes. We have the kind of like technical rundown from Mikhail, and then you kind of obviously had the opportunity to review it here on the podcast format for us. But also you broke down all of the guides, all the missables, the walkthrough, basically all of the more functional aspects of the game across a handful of articles up on the site as well, which I am following along as I'm playing through the game. So if you like Adam's style or just the RPG site style of kind of like checklist bullet point walkthrough, we've got one up for Adventures of Elliot. And if you see any issues with it, just DM Adam and let him know if he messed up.
Good
No,
job, Adam.
really, just leave a comment and we'll fix it when we see it, because those are big efforts that you have to try to run and get in under the embargo, and sometimes it's easy to say west instead of east or something like that. So if you see an issue, just let us know and we'll fix it. All right, the second game we're going to talk about here is more in a preview context, but I thought you did some really, really cool work here, Josh. We're going to be talking about um, Granblue Fantasy Relink, Endless Ragnarok, which we've talked about in the past as the June release has been kind of coming up, and we talked about the new characters and the new voice actors and the new gameplay systems. But you were able to put together like a whole bunch of features. I don't know about a whole bunch, a handful of features, like a preview, an interview, and a video about some hands-on opportunities you had with Endless Ragnarok. So uh, I'll just let you kind of take it away about what you're able to do, how the opportunity arose, what you're able to see, your thoughts on it, and your excitement for the expansion coming out in under a month.
Yeah, so at Summer Game Fest, we had a pretty they offered this to like a lot of people, obviously, who were visiting, but and it ended up being one of the lengthier appointments for a lot of people who took it up at SGF, where Side Games came out there and they had sort of like a 3-part appointment that consisted of about an hour and 45 minutes, which is way and above about most appointment length times there, which consisted of a 30-minute media presentation to introduce the title as new features for people who weren't like aware, to get people to speed up to it. Then 30 minutes of hands-on, which is like a new build that is different from the open beta and now the public demo that came out for it, and a pretty lengthy interview with Tetsuya Fukuhara, which is the creative director of the whole Granblue series, and Sanshiro Hidaka, who's is an interesting figure because he's now the director of this Endless Ragnarok major expansion, but he used to be the narrative director of the base Relink, which makes me wonder who, like, I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head, but the director on Relink was Yasuyuki Kaji alongside Fukuhara. So Kaji's not on this. Hidaka is. Who knows what Kaji is doing behind the scenes? So we got a pretty about 45 minutes ish interview with that, which is a pretty lengthy amount of time because they are in tune with how they answer stuff and how the translators interpret stuff. Like, they are very speedy and accurate about it. And this is like a group interview format that in my group, I was able to ask a lot of questions because we also had RPG site contributor Scott White along with it as well. So it was one of those things that's like, okay, this seems to be this is going to be around the corner. There's like a huge opportunity for us because I know our audience, really likes Relink in that respect. And we also got word, hey, if you have any capture card devices, you're free to bring them, and we can set it up and let you record your session. So I asked James, who, can I borrow your capture card on it? This was like a very last minute 11th hour thing that I'm glad we were able to set up. And sort of some complications here and there, but we were able to iron them out with the staff there, and I was able to record that. So I was thinking, like, how am I gonna structure this preview opportunity in that regard? For the first part, I kind of wanted to get all of the segments in and represent them in in a decent manner, because we all learned interesting things throughout every single segment of it that was not known before. Like, for example, like even the media presentation, when they were introducing everything, uh, they lightly mentioned before when they revealed that, like, this was not Endless Ragnarok wasn't planned when Relink released. It only came into fruition because of the really incredible response of Relink, of people just having a blast with it, saying, "Hey, we really want more because you guys made something incredible." In that regard, like even amongst this podcast, like the majority of us here are not like Granblue fantasy like browser game players or are in the know on that, but we still played Relink and we're like, this is a damn fun game, even though we're not in the know of the whole Granblue lore, and that's totally fine in that regard. And that's the majority of people who came into Relink, of like, this was just like a damn fun game to play. So out of that response, they created Endless Ragnarok within 2 years, and I was wondering, like, when they were showing the new features on it, like the summons feature that's new to this expansion, I was like, okay, they're gonna have like a few expansions. Then they nonchalantly like revealed, oh, there's over 100 summons in this expansion. I'm like, wait, excuse me? they're like, and then they've explicitly mentioned every NPC and every enemy character like is part of that summons. I'm like, wait, what? That's okay, sure, that's crazy. And a big part of that presentation also is Hidaka talking about the new master trait system and how they were inspired by the Diablo series in implementing it, because they noticed, like, you could tell the Cygames staff and developers are RPG players themselves. Like like this all dates back all the way to the development of the original Granblue Fantasy browser game, where Hidaka and the development team noticed, as Relink started to develop amongst the community, people got to the end game, that eventually every character became optimized in the sense that, like, hey, here's the build you want for them because they do the most damage upkeep. They kind of, like, quote unquote solve that character in terms of, like, their optimal performance, and they wanted players to give players an incentive to vary up those tactics through the master trait system. And eventually, like, this did, some of those playstyles started branching in the sense that, like, some of the super end game stuff valued survivability and defense with, like, Vayne's bubble, for example, but to make like public lobbies more consistent with beating some of the fights, because Vayne's bubble was that AoE shield that people huddled around when there was, like, a big attack coming and so forth that wasn't easy to dodge and so forth. So there was a little bit of that, but for the most part, a lot of character builds were eventually funneled into that same getting all those damage cap sigils, war elemental, etc., in that regard, and supplementary damage. So the master trait system is supposed to, is a new system to incentivize, diversifying builds, and even, having characters get new, like, skills and abilities and moves from it. So we'll see exactly how that's implemented in the final game on that. So, and just, like, a lot of, like, other stuff within that media presentation that I jotted down notes on, put that up, and then after that, the hands-on thing, which I this is the journey to this video was a little bit funny, because I received that video file back, after, it got done recording and everything, but I noticed there was no in-game audio with it, and I was like, I when I was playing that hands-on session, I was always in the back of my mind. I was like, I kind of know what people want and are looking for, but I only have less than half an hour to do this, so I have to be pretty smart with my time, especially because the opening of that hands-on was like one of the introductory missions to Endless Ragnarok, where you were forced to play as the main character, and they're showing you some of the new features in this new Fate Breaker difficulty tier, which has the new Chaos and Chaos Plus and Chaos Plus Plus difficulties in it. So I was like, okay, after that, introductory session, I kind of wanted to hover over some master traits, and of course, what people really want to see is, like, these new playable characters. And in the build that they had at SGF for us to play, all those new playable characters were available to play. So I was like, I'll just run a full party of all new playable characters. We'll play the mission that they want us to play, and kind of go from there. And I basically had, like, this footage with me, and I was like, it'd be kind of a waste to not do anything with it, because, like, first, like, James was able to get the capture card to beat last minute, and then the staff there running the booth were able to help me set up that all that things, and I don't want their efforts to kind of be in vain for me to just get this footage and not do anything with it. So one evening, I think it was like Sunday evening, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna sit down and just run XSplit and have this record the video recording, but have some backing BGM and just me commentating over it for this runtime. And it was a very, I'll admit, very amateurish sort of production. It's nothing, no frills, no professionalism in terms of, like, presentation. I don't have, like, a dedicated video editor to make it all nice. And I was like, I just want this footage to exist somewhere, and maybe some people will get something out of it, something that I'm not seeing. Because in my eyes, I'm like, I just want it to exist in some form. And to my surprise, that video has kind of exploded when that went up, and has only gone up. There's, like, people analyzing, like, almost every frame of it, which I'm very happy of. I'm very happy that people, like, a lot of people saw a lot of things that I didn't catch, but I was able to, like, I guess in the back of my mind, still was able to record at that very limited time frame in that regard. So if you're listening to this and you watch that video, thank you so much. And it means a lot to, like, me who, I admittedly I didn't think about it that much. So thank you in that regard. Um, and then after that, we had the whole like 45 minutes ish interview with Fukuhara-san and Hidaka-san, and that was also a very comprehensive, illuminating talk with them in terms of like the the production of Endless Ragnarok, the challenges of making, let's say, like Magliel and Galanza, who were previously boss characters. When I was playing that hands on, I got to play a little bit of them, and I was like, oh, they have so many moves that they've never, these are new moves for them as playable characters. They're not just from the boss fights with them. So I got them to speak about, like, hey, what were the challenges both creatively and technologically to make these characters playable in the first place, all that stuff. So if you're interested in just like learning more about like the development of this game and some fun stuff, um, definitely check it out. We got a little bit more um, like info basically on, like, remember the little pincer crabs you collected in the game and probably had to go search up a guide because the in-game map wasn't there at launch. There's more of that now. They added new crabs to collect in this
I
expansion.
forgot that they added a map. They added a
Yeah.
map after launch, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember Chow having to make like little short. Didn't he make like little short, like 5-second videos on how to find each one or something like that? Like little
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did in my guide, but it's like, oh my god, not doing that again. Now and then they added maps later. It's like, fuck, I could have used that.
Everyone could have used that for sure. But yeah. But there are new types of crabs, like they're like the black crabs, black pincers, that were supposedly, they were inspired by Far Cry 3 to implement these, where you can see them, but the path to them wouldn't be obvious. So you might have to, like, to take a hidden path or some sort of like uh not obvious way to get to them there, in that regard. And there's also like a summon in the game that is like a pincer, like waterfall, where it'll deploy more crabs in that attack, that summon, the more that you've collected. So it'll be more effective the more that you have of them, which is really funny in that. And I also saw one of the screenshots that were running around from other interviews where the gacha roulette spin during Granblue like anniversary events, like that roulette that determines how many free draws you get. Apparently, that's a summon as well, which is very funny in that regard. Like, like, they are getting very silly with the summons, which I love. So if
Yeah,
you're,
I was gonna say they stopped using the gacha pin because of they don't want to like work with Fuji TV anymore due to some scandalous events that they had back a year ago. So that's why it does the whole like spinning roulette thing you see now instead of those two gacha pin mascots. So.
I had no idea that they had a fallout with Gachapin. That's crazy.
Oh man,
I assumed Gachapin was their character.
No, it's not. Nope.
I love those characters.
Those things are menaces. But yeah, so it's just in general, I did like, it's a very comprehensive thing that I'm glad people liked. Is probably my biggest project at SGF in that regard, and that it was received very positively. And thank you for all who read it, watched it, whatever. And I'm very excited for this release. It's one of those games that I really loved, and I'm very, 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 very happy they're making more of it.
And then we have the video linked on. Let's see, you have the interview feature as one feature, and then you have the preview feature as another, with the video linked inside of that. I just want to make sure I have both of these lined up. So the YouTube is also on our YouTube channel, which is not something we do a lot, but we do have that listed on our YouTube channel. It's the most recent upload. And then we have the interview from let's see here. Sanchiro Hidaka and Tetsuya Fukuhara up on the site as well. So 2 articles on the RPG site, 1 video on the YouTube. The next game we're going to talk about, I kind of put it here in like the third slot because I did already kind of introduce it back when it first released. But now that I finished my review and I finished the game, I figured I'd kind of just give my final thoughts here. And this is for a game that launched literally like on the main stage show of Summer Game Fest, so it kind of got buried, I think. This is the Gothic 1 remake. It launched on June 5th, which I think was the stage show, if I'm remembering my dates correct. And I did get a review code like ahead of launch, but only a couple days. It took me much longer than that to beat the game. We also had a bunch of other stuff going on, so I did not rush myself to get this out by embargo, but I got it out last week, just a couple days ago. And this was a game where I had played the original Gothic. Uh, it's not a game I grew up with, so that's where I'm coming from. Is that this is not me returning home or anything like that. Like I'm like, I'm kind of interested in the remake. Let me play the original. I played it back in April. I think I gave some quick thoughts on it. Now let me play the remake with the original kind of fresh in my head, just to see kind of actually have a little bit of authority in terms of did they hit the bar? Is this faithful? Is it not? And the short answer is kind of yes. It is faithful for better or for worse when it comes to uh, reimagining a game from 2001 into a game for the modern era. And let me try to put some actual meaning. Like what does he mean by that? So this this is a game where how do I say this? I guess I'll start with just kind of like the premise and the narrative because it's pretty light in that sense, where it feels old school in a way in that when you go to boot up Gothic 1 Remake, let's say you're playing this game and you don't really know much about it other than that it's an RPG that is a remake of a cult classic that people think, inspired a lot of other games. For instance, I reminded myself that Drova Forsakenkin, which I talked about a year ago, an indie game that came out in late 2024, in their special thanks, they actually said, "Thank you, Piranha Bytes, for making the game Gothic." Like basically just talking about very explicitly who inspired them. And then other studios as well have kind of referenced the series and at least Piranha Bytes' catalog as kind of inspirations for them. But when you boot up this game, like there is no character creator. You don't even get to name your character. It just kind of goes. And there is kind of like a set protagonist, but he is literally like affectionately called the nameless hero. Like he's not really meant to be um like a player expression of themselves. He really more is just to be kind of like uh a vehicle for which the game to progress. He's kind of Link like in a way, where Link has uh some indications of a personality, but not really. Nameless Hero is kind of the same way. Like he does speak, he does have a voice actor. He did in the original game, but you don't really get a ton of ways to like in the sense of role playing. He's not that sort of role
He's
playing
not
character.
Commander Shepard.
Yes, exactly. So because when you have like dialogue options in Gothic, they're very functional, and in a lot of ways, that's like there's not a lot of flavor in terms of like this is only here because it's for role playing or because it's telling a story. A lot of it's very functional. Like this is a shopkeeper. This dialogue option gives you the shop menu. This dialogue option unlocks his training menu. This dialogue option will complete the quest. So there's not a lot of, if you play a BioWare game or Bethesda game, usually there's like a list of options like tell me about the blah 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 or tell me about what do you think about this? Can you tell me about that NPC? There's a little bit of that, but not really. It's pretty lean in that sense. So if I had to describe Gothic, and I did this in the write up of the review, so I'll try to do a credit here in the podcast format, is that Gothic is a game that is very it sounds like it's gonna sound so buzzwordy, but I'm gonna try to put some actual like teeth on it. Very progression focused. And what I mean by that is that when you pull up like your character sheet in Gothic, there's not a whole lot to it. You have strength, you have dexterity, you have HP, you have mana. And in terms of stats, that's pretty much it. Everything else is tied to skills. And skills are kind of things like lockpicking or climbing or swimming or two-handed weapons or pickpocketing or bows. And each of these is something that only has at most 3 levels like untrained, you've never trained in two-handed weapons, trained, you've trained in two-handed weapons once, or mastered, you've trained in two-handed weapons twice. So it's not like Skyrim where I forget the exact terminology in that game, where every skill goes from 0 to 100. It's very, what's the word? Skill points are at a premium, and they also feel very impactful. So if you pick up a two-handed weapon in this game and you've never trained it, your attacks are going to be very slow. You're not going to combo effectively. You're going to like stumble over your feet as you swing it.
You're gonna.
But as soon as you find it, yeah. But as soon as you find a trainer that can teach you in two-handed weapons and you level it up once, immediately you're moving quicker, your combat, like it feels impactful. This is like the exact opposite of picking a trait out of a skill tree and it's like your blocking is 2% more effective or whatever. It's the exact opposite of that, which I think feels really good. And as I implied there, when you level up, you get a little bit of HP by default, but when you level up, you don't inherently get stronger purely just from your level up. Instead, you get something called learning points, which I think is kind of a clunky way to call it, but that's what it was in the original, and that's what it is here. So LP for short. So every time you level up, you get 10 learning points, and learning points are basically like currency, where you can effectively trade these in at trainers to do one of two things. You can use them just to straight up improve your stats. Hey, this person can train me in strength. I need more strength to wield this axe I found. So I'm going to use my 10 learning points that I just got from a level up, go to this trainer and have them improve my strength. Like you can do that. Or you find, oh, this person can train me in lockpicking. So that's not going to improve any stats. It's not going to make you more effective in combat, but it'll give you one of those, again, very impactful level ups and an ability like lockpicking or like climbing or things like that. And I think that that's really cool. It sounds kind of basic on paper, and other games, of course, have done similar things, but I think it works really well
Yeah,
for a handful of reasons.
I actually kind of wish more games had this sort of like master like mechanic. There's actually two games that come to mind that kind of do a similar thing. Of course, they're going to be all a little bit different, but like Breath of Fire 3 has a master system where you basically train up your different characters by selecting like a master to train them, and that'll change their stats and skills available. And also Wandering Sword that I reviewed a couple years ago. That one I think is really cool, and how you do it's like the wuxia type story where you find master to basically unlock your potential in different ways. But my broad point is that I really actually kind of like this sort of system because it kind of it ties in progression with exploration in a sense, where it's like you gotta, not only are you just building stats, you have to find the person that helps you build your stats. So that's always fun.
Yeah, because it ties in a sense that like if you want to get better at bows, it's not enough just to equip a bow and start using it. And for some games, that's the intent, is that you get stronger based on what you use. You know, any saga like game or whatever. I forget if there's a general term for that, but you just get better as you use a weapon. Like that's one way to style an RPG. Another way to style an RPG is that you put points into whatever. I'm going to put points in one-handed weapon, and therefore, because I've allocated my points there, I'm better at it. Where this is almost like a third option, where it's like you have to engage with a character in the game to do that. And obviously, these are not hard and fast rules or lines. Like they can overlap, where you can borrow aspects from one and the other to kind of create hybrid approaches. But it does mean, hey, not only do you want to complete quests, explore, find people, talk to them, learn what they can provide. But you want to make sure another aspect of this game is that it doesn't hold your hand. And I know that sounds such like a back of the box tagline, like, ooh, this game doesn't hold your hand. How mature of it. But what I mean by that is that you it has a very thorough quest log. Like it'll actually say this is quest 1 of 60 in your log. But when you read the quest log, it'll tell you, I should speak to so and so. Cavalorn is a person who can train you in hunting, for instance. It doesn't tell you where Cavalorn is. It doesn't put a waypoint on him. It doesn't say go this direction. It's like, do you know where Cavalorn is? You might have found him in the past. Did you commit him to memory? He lives west of the city. Like you might know that, but there's no waypointing. There's no exclamation point above his head, which I think is a really good middle ground, where your quest log will tell you explicitly what you have to do, but you still have to execute in terms of, do I know where that is? Do I know how to get there? What do I need to do in order to get there? Rather than saying oh, look at my map. I've got a blue marker in this place. I just need to go there to finish this quest in my log. So I think that works really well. Uh, also, it's a very classic sort of game where when you first start out, you feel weak as shit. You're there's nothing special about you. You are just thrown in this colony, and I guess I can kind of pivot into narrative here. And you just have to figure it out. So Gothic is a game that is kind of like a small vertical slice of about a much larger world that you only get to really hear about. So you kind of hear about, and the remake does expand on this slightly in like the opening cinematics and just throughout the game, where there is a kingdom that is at a long-standing war with the orcs, and the King Rodar, basically needs magical weaponry in order to finance his war. And there's this magic ore that can be found in this area that effectively can be used, that the king kind of owns, and they tithe this magic ore to the king. However, due to like a mistake with like a bunch of mages, 6 from the fire mage like kingdom and 6 from the water mage group, they created this barrier across the in this colony area, and it's like this is like prototypical Gothic. And again, I'm not like an expert because I've not played 2 and 3, but this concept, I think even people who haven't played the game are at least tangentially aware of, is that there's this giant dome in this area that you can't get out of. Once you get in, you can't get out. And that's kind of like the key premise of the game.
Yeah, before I really knew anything about Gothic, that was, like you said, like the one thing I knew about Gothic. It's like, oh yeah, the game takes place in a magical barrier dome.
Yeah, and it wasn't the intent, is that basically like there was an intent to like fence it off, but the execution was kind of screwed up, and I forget the exact details of how. But this ended up with some interesting consequences. So you have a bunch of people who are originally in there to get this ore, this magical ore for the king, and they found themselves in a very interesting position. They can't get out, but now the king who needs this ore is completely at their mercy. Hey, you want us to get you ore outside of the barrier? Well, how about you pay us, out the ass for it, or you provide us with weaponry? Like otherwise you're not going to get it. See, they're stuck in the colony, but they have all the leverage. So that's kind of like where you find yourself, is that you are thrown in here. You have a message to the fire mages, which is sealed and you're not supposed to read it. And basically you learn about all of this kind of secondhand. This has all happened in the past. Everything is kind of, I don't want to say well established, but it's been established for a while. Where this is kind of like the power dynamics at play. Um, where these little fiefdoms inside this colony have kind of emerged based on the situation that they find themselves in now. It feels very early 2000s in how this is presented, but I actually found really no issue with that. It's very staccato in terms of like there are 3 camps. There's the old camp. Those are the people that are just here to kind of exploit the king, give him some ore, and get a lot in return for it. There's the new camp, which are very much every single group in this game is very self-centered, very self-interested. There's really no between the 3 different groups, the old camp and the new camp, and then the swamp camp, which is located in the swamp. I know, very 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 exciting. I know. The new camp is very much more self-interested. They're why do we got to give order to the king? They can't hurt us in here. We're gonna look out for number one. We're just gonna take what's ours. And they're bandits and highwaymen effectively. And then there's the swamp camp, which kind of ties into the more overall narrative a little bit in a different way, where they believe that there is a god looking over them that they call the sleeper. And you've probably heard of that if you've followed the game at all. And they say that the sleeper gives them visions um, whenever they smoke this like weed called swamp weed. And yes, they do play with that in a very early 2000s way. Like, yes, they're basically a bunch of, loonies and drug addicts and things like that. But they swear that they have a higher purpose called to them by the sleeper. And who the sleeper actually is, you kind of learn throughout the course of the game. And it's kind of interesting just the way it's presented. Like the game does build up to a climax, but in a very kind of interesting way. It's got an interesting flavor to it. And I'm trying to figure out if there's better ways to explain that, but uh, eventually you kind of find yourself in a position where you are kind of a nameless hero. There's nothing special about you, but you find yourself in like a position where you are going to have the outcome of all the people that live in this shielded dome at your fingertips. Their fate is in your hand, so to speak. So I think the escalation from the beginning to that point is pretty cool. When I was about halfway through this game, I thought very highly of it. I thought it was punishing in a way that I thought was like it was kind of like the opposite of Elliot in a few ways, where you had to be considerate about what you were doing. You only had so many resources. You start out pretty weak, so you can't just go everywhere willy nilly. You got to figure out how to get stronger. It's the sort of thing like when you cross a bridge and these two highwaymen say, "Hey, give us 10 ore, which is the currency of this game, or else we're going to beat you up." You really have no option at the first. You are way too weak to fight them starting out. So you kind of have to be like, all right, here's your 10 ore. I'll come back when I'm stronger and, show you what for. But you kind of have to pick your battles. And I mean that like both deliberately and kind of like both specifically and kind of like generically, where you might head east on the map and realize, oh, there's the wolves and the beasts here are way too strong for me. So I'm going to head south instead because that direction it's only mole rats and blood flies and I can handle those until I can get stronger. Um, the learning point system that I talked about, there are some late game options where, in order to, like, for instance, to master two-handed weaponry requires 40 learning points, which is basically 4 level ups worth of banked points. So when you have to commit to a certain play style, it truly is like a commitment. You can't just become a master at everything. You have to decide, I want to be a mage, so I'm going to level up my magic skills, or I'm going to be an archer. I'm going to learn how to use crossbows because those are some of the most effective, ranged weapons in the game. You can't just become master of everything. You can kind of become a jack of all trades, but usually that's not to your benefit. Um, Late in the game, some of the things did frustrate me, usually in terms of like technical performance and polish. This game does not run very well. Uh, Even on a pretty strong PC, I was using like performance DLSS to try to get my frame rate up. So it's just a very heavy Unreal Engine game. I think it does look very nice, but it just does not run well. Hopefully over time they'll be able to like smooth things out, or the hardware will catch up. But who knows in the world we live in now? But I was still able to get like decent frame rates, but usually only with some caveats like performance level DLSS and things like that. Also, just some just general lack of polish. These are sorts of things that don't really frustrate me at all, but I could see them being incredibly frustrating to other players, just depending on your tolerance for that sort of thing. Like for instance, just to give an example of when I say polish, what do I mean? There is a person in a camp who will teach you how to use crossbows. Um, throughout the course of the game, you eventually get kicked out of that camp. And if you talk to this person, he says, "Well, I'm not gonna teach you anymore how to use crossbows." But eventually, he kinda defects, and he will teach you. So very, very late in the game, I'm like, "Alright, can I still learn how to use crossbows?" When I talk to this guy, I literally have 2 dialogue options that are very, very similar. One of the options is like, "Hey, can you teach me anything?" And the other option is like, "What can you teach me?" So, like, "Huh, it's weird that there's 2 dialogue options saying basically the same thing." And
One was
one of the
like left
dialogue
over,
options, yeah,
basically.
one of them was like, "Nope, I can't teach you because we're not aligned." So, and then like, "All right, let me go back into this conversation wheel and pick the second option." And he's like, "Sure, I'll teach you." So just little things like that, where it's just like, that's very strange. Like clearly one of those dialogue options should have been disabled or no longer in the list. And that's just a specific example, but there's probably about 8 things like that that I could name. Um, Another thing was like very early in the game, you can pickpocket a person's like a key to a chest that they have nearby. Very basic RPG, nothing profound there. Like if you learn how to pickpocket, you can steal people's stuff, including their like money and their keys, and open their locked gates and things like that. But then there was like a quest, and he says like, "Hey, if you do this for me, I'll give you my keys for that chest." But I had already stolen them, and the quest logic didn't work out to be like, basically the quest was stuck. I could never complete it because I already had his keys.
Oh yeah,
But
so he's
like,
like,
why am I being
"You go
punished for
ahead, go ahead
this?
and take the stuff from my chest," and it's like, "I already did."
It's like, and my quest log said something like, "He will give me his keys," but I already had them. And over time, I'm sure these things will be polished out, but it's not a great look. It's a lot of like stuck quests and things like that. And it's like the original game had that too. So like it's faithful to the original game. I mean that kind of tongue in cheek. So it's a sort of thing where I do think over time it'll get polished out, but I wish it wasn't just 1 or 2 things. It was like 8 or 9 things by the end of the game. And how impactful were those little things? Not very, but just if you're looking for a game that's highly polished and doesn't have that like level of jank, to use kind of an overused term, it's there. Uh, Also, late in the game, you do go into a long kinda dungeon-like area, but once you're in there, it's very tricky to get out. I think you can, but you have to, like, backtrack manually, you can't fast travel, and once I was in there, I realized I needed to prepare a whole bunch more health potions or healing spells or things like that because I was, like, running around with a sliver of health with only a few options to heal myself. And I'm like, oh, if only I had known to like bring a lot more potions, like dump my inventory and stock up before I got here. It felt like kind of self-inflicted. Like I could have avoided this, but also it still frustrated me in that sense. And this game was a game that frustrated me at times, sometimes in ways that I was able to overcome and I kind of felt like I accomplished something, but sometimes in ways where I'm like, this shouldn't be this frustrating. I feel like this should be smoothed out. So I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth and be like, streamline it, but don't streamline it. But just trying to find that like that middle point where it's like, okay, this is meant to be challenging. You just got to get good. Or this feels like it's more challenging than it needs to be because of something that doesn't relate and things like in some cases or things like that, where I might have the best armor available at a certain point in the game, and certain enemies don't even deal damage with me. So I feel like, oh, I've just broken the game because I have armor. That means that all the enemies that used to one shot me now tickle me instead versus some enemies that cast fireballs or whatever, and it's like, "Oh, that melts me instantly in one hit. This feels overtuned." And speaking of that, I guess just yesterday at the time of recording, they just patched the game to make all the enemies deal more damage, and a few of the comments are like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you doing this?" And it's the sort of game that you can if you have the right build, if you kinda know what you're doing, you can break the game and make it trivial, but if you're someone playing for the first time, you might not know like all the little tricks or secrets or things like that or the best ways to break the game. So I feel like I haven't played the game since the patch. This is patch 1.02. But I feel like if you're a person who has played this before or played this style of game before, um, it's probably not going to affect you that much. But if you're someone that's trying to go out of their wheelhouse or play something a little bit different, and they've made the enemies even more punishing, I feel like this is like gonna gonna fence people out a little bit more. And I'm not saying a game has to be for everyone, but I thought that was an interesting design decision that they didn't just tweak one enemy's stats up. Throughout the board, they're just like bloodhounds do more damage, orcs have more HP, whatever casts, have higher mana pools. I'm just like, Jesus, they just took they instead of taking the nerf bat to everything, they just like juiced everyone up like throughout the game. And like I have no idea what the fallout of that's gonna be, but I thought it was an interesting choice. Um
So whenever I get around to this, I'll play the real version.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, it's the opposite of what Josh tries to do whenever he plays games like, Kazan, where they nerf everything because 'cause they're like, "Oh, that was overtuned." Apparently, they're like,
Yeah,
everything's undertuned, it's all stronger." It's
that
the
was
sort of
funny.
game where usually I hate one of the and I understand why they do well, but 10 things you gotta know before you start this game. Like, I don't like those videos because it kinda prescribes how you should play in a way that I feel like should come naturally. But in Gothic, I almost like, if Adam said, "Hey, I'm gonna play this. Do you have any tips for me?" I'd be like, "Hell yeah, I do. This is what you should do." Like, and it feels bad almost, but if you if you do it a certain way, you can make things a lot easier for you than if you go blind and you just try to figure it out. You might if you pick the wrong direction, and I mean that both literally or generally, you might be like, "This game is absolutely unfun." And maybe that's just the sort of game it is. Maybe that's just how it is, and that's fine. Like, I'm still thinking about how I wanna, like how do you put, like, a score on that? I don't really know. Obviously, I wish the technical performance was better. I hope they polish things out, uh, in that sense. In terms of other things, if I were to put this a one word on this game, and I've already used it a couple times, it is faithful. It almost feels like it's faithful enough that if you're interested, I don't think you're getting a meaningfully different. This is my personal opinion. I don't think you're getting a meaningfully different experience quality-wise if you play the original versus if you play the remake. Of course, the original was made 25 years ago. It doesn't run well. I played the GOG version because it ran well out of the box, and of course, it is a dated game, visually and, performance-wise. So in that sense, of course, the games are different. But in terms of, like, was anything compromised? with the additions and changes to the remake? I really don't think so. They did add a few things, like they added the ability to climb like certain surfaces. They added the ability to like ride a domesticated scavenger to help run around quicker. But they didn't add anything.
Did they add
Go
women?
ahead.
Did they add women?
Oh, I do have one comment on that. I didn't add it in my review, even though I thought about it. But my review was already 3,000 words long, and I'm like, I don't need to touch on this in the review. But in the original game, there are basically no women with dialogue trees. They're all servants, slaves, maids. And I actually commented on the podcast, like, I wonder if they touch this. They did add something in the remake that I thought was in line with the rest of the game. They didn't go too far with it, but I still don't think they landed in the quite correct place. So you end up going to the old camp and you meet this cook named Syra, and she has like a handful of quests for you. And there's actually achievement tied to finishing this quest line. And basically, she says like, "Hey, I want to get out of here. I'm not treated well. Can you support me?" And you have a handful of quests that you do with her, and she's an actual NPC, and she's I don't know, she's portrayed just fine, and you kind of realize, and you're empathetic to her cause, and she feels like she fits. And you actually kind of the character actually comments like, "There's not a lot of women here," that, and that's I can't empathize with what specific hardships you're dealing with. So that I thought was all fine, and then eventually she's like, "I'm gonna hatch an escape plan." Me and the two other women at this camp, but then you find that she gets murdered, and I'm like, "That's interesting." And as far as I could tell, people were wondering, like, is there certain things you can do to prevent her murder? And as far as I can tell at the time, people have not found a way to save her. Like, it seems like it's scripted. I don't know for sure, but that seems to be like the intent of the quest. And you find a note on her that says like, "Hey, meet me at this time. We're gonna get out of here." And what you learn is that one of the other women panicked and kind of like gave away the escape plan. So I know I'm kind of like describing this probably pretty poorly, but there's three women. They kind of hatch an escape plan. One of them kind of panics and kind of tells like someone that they thought they trusted. So the person that gave you the quest gets murdered. So there's two left. Okay. You talk to them. They're fighting over each other. Like, how could you give up the plan? What? And then one of them kills the other. So two women down, one left. And then she calls the guards on you. So I ran away. I'm like, okay, is that just like the bad outcome? Like, it feels like I didn't do it right. And then later, I find that the one woman that survived, the one that stabbed the other and called the guards on me, she was in the other camp, and she was like, "Thank you for helping me escape." And I'm like, "What? What?"
Crazy.
Like, I just thought, like, I missed something. Maybe the quest didn't progress like the way it was supposed to, or maybe that was the intent. But like, it started out like, okay, this is fine. Okay, this is like not like it didn't need to be like a kumbaya perfect outcome. If one of them died in the process of trying to escape, that kind of, yeah, that's the
That's
world they
world
live
building,
in this
right?
place.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah. But then the fact that one of the remaining women stabbed the other, called the guards on me, I ran away, and then the quest was done at that point. Um, then I found her, and she's like, "Thank you for saving me." I'm like, "Wait, I missed something. Like, clearly something here was unfinished or broken or progressed not the way it was supposed to." Weird. So that's that when I talked about that they didn't nail the ending, that's kinda what I meant. Like, I should be able to call her out for, like, betraying me, or maybe there's a way earlier in the quest to, like, convince them to get a better outcome. I don't know. So I think I appreciate the developers for trying something. I don't think they compromised anything by adding it, but I also don't think they really added anything either. It was kinda like, "Oh, that's a thing, I guess." They coulda done more. But in general, they are presented a slightly bit
well,
better,
like
but,
as
like, it
actual
was a
real
low bar to
characters.
begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, characters with quests that you can speak to. They're not just there just in the background as, like, set dressing, but still, they don't do anything really great with them either, so, yeah. But in terms in general about the additions they made, I thought there's no individual addition that says, like, "I can't believe they changed how this works," at least in my opinion. I think some people who played the original game many more times than I did might take more umbrage with, "I can't believe they changed how that works." But, like, to me, I played through it once, then I played through the remake, and I could identify certain things that they obviously added, like, "Oh, clearly this wasn't in the original game," but it fits and it feels fine. But then there are certain things where I'm like, "Oh, here's a quest here. I don't know if this is new or not," which is just a testament to how good of a fit it is. It's not like it clearly says, "Oh, this was added after the fact." Um, the end of the game does get a fair bit, like, uh it becomes less quest focused and much more like kill all the enemies in your path focused, which is kind of true to the original game as well. So it goes from being a game where you're exploring the world, talking to people, completing like some excursions out into the wild, doing quests, to like a game where it's like, all right, go into this dungeon and now you have to kill 100 enemies because that's how the game ends. And I feel like a lot of Piranha Bytes games, at least the ones that I've played, both Elex games did that as well. Obviously, this remake is not a Piranha Bytes game, but it's built on the bones of one. Or it just feels like once you progress far enough, eventually it kind of devolves into, okay, now you have to kill a bunch of enemies, go. Which if you're strong enough and you like your build, that could feel fine, but it also loses something in the same space. But um long story short, I think it's a faithful remake. I think it was a very interesting game. When I was halfway through it, I thought very, very highly of it. Only in the back half of the game where some of the polish and technical and writing issues kind of cropped up, I kind of, I docked my score by 1 to put something on that. But not in a sense that I was, dismayed that I played it. I do recommend
Sounds
it.
like give it a few months and it'll be in a much more polished state.
Yeah, give it a few months, and then also maybe watch. I don't have a specific recommendation, but maybe I almost grimace saying this. Watch one of those games, one of those videos that says 10 things you should know, because there's certain things that the game doesn't teach you that if you know something off the bat, it'll just probably make things a lot less frustrating going forward. But yeah, and then also read my review up on the site. I have it written out.
Well, give me like 1 or 2 things that you think people should really know before going in.
Let's see here. I would say based the fact that the skills are so impactful when you level them up is something the game doesn't really tee you up on. You might think, "Oh, I'm terrible with this sword. Everything feels like shit. I'm gonna bump up my strength so that I do more damage." It's like, no, find the trainer in one-handed swords or whatever you want to use, because even getting one training level in whatever weapon you choose is going to feel so much more better than just putting points into stats. So like going from untrained to trained, even just 1 tier is gonna feel so much better. So that's one thing. Another thing let's see. I'm trying to think like very basic 101 things you should know. You get more EXP. You get about it feels like you get about 2/3 of your EXP from killing things versus questing. So once you are a few hours in and you have the and you can start to actually fight simple creatures like mole rats and wolves. Like if you see a couple wolves across the river, don't just leave them be. Like experience points are at a premium. You should probably kill them. Like experience points are valuable. This game is not a game that offers you opportunities to grind, and enemies only respawn very sparingly. They don't, I think, die forever, but it's not like a game where the wolves are the wolves are gonna respawn every time I leave the camp. Like, no, they will stay dead. So if you can, go ahead and kill them because A, the experience is valuable, and B, it'll just make all your other trips so much easier. So that's kind of like tip number 2 is that experience is at a premium. Don't waste it, and find it and seek it out when you can. Also, just pick up everything. Just there's no weight encumbrance. You just pick up everything. It's helpful. So that's thing 3.
It seems like this game was a success. Like even though it was like in development hell, but felt like forever. It seems like they've landed on their feet pretty well with this release.
I know I've been speaking at length, but one last comment is that I guess I never played the demo, but I guess they completely or significantly changed the melee combat between the demo and release, and I actually quite like the melee combat. I thought it worked pretty well. Very, very basically,
sounds like an example where they took, criticism to heart and were like, they released this demo and were like, okay, we need to change something.
Yeah, very, very basically, you have 4 swings, which are basically boiled down to left, right, uppercut, and then like downward swing. Or sometimes instead of an uppercut, it's a stab. And the better you get at a certain weapon, the more that you can kind of like uh, combo them together. And you can't just press buttons willy-nilly. You have to time it somewhat. Like you have to do right, and then as soon as your sword swings all the way to the right, you have to press left, and you'll swing it back. And then if you do like stab right at the end of that, you'll spin and like flourish and you'll finish it with a stab. And when you get the timing down, it actually feels pretty good. It's not like action game. Like this isn't Bayonetta or Ys or something like that, but it feels decent once you actually have some abilities and you kind of learn the rhythm. but it's also the sort of thing where it is an RPG where if you're untrained in a weapon and you try to combo, it's just gonna feel bad until you're trained in it. So it goes back to point number one. It will feel better once you are trained in it. I promise. So last combat, I like the combat. I'll say that.
I was checking Steam. First of all, this game has gotten quite a handful of reviews, and it's sitting at very positive, so that's pretty good. I know it's sold like 500,000 already. But also Steam is telling me like this is in your discovery queue because you played games like it and it is popular. Like, okay, sounds about me. So
reasonable.
And I think that covers the main 3 games that we wanted to look at. But we did have one last section here, kind of teed up, that we kind of do at least a couple times every year, specifically around this time every summer. And that is, of course, the Steam Next Fest, like taking a look in at the demos that are available. There's certain things here that where we've looked at games in these Steam Next Fest demos that we end up covering once they fully release, years down the line after their initial look in. So it's kind of cool to kind of get an early look at some things that might end up being like on our review docket, in 2028 or so on. But Josh, this is something that you often, for many years now, have kind of taken point on really saying like, hey, I'm going to seek out what's available on Steam Next Fest. I'm going to not only check out things that are interesting to you, but things that you think might be interesting to others, studios that you followed for a while, even things that just find neat to you. You just kind of chime in here and at least platform them in to what extent you can, because I know sometimes there's so many demos that you can't just get to all of them. So you had mentioned that you had a couple that you've over the last couple of days just had a chance to just quickly look in that you wanted to just at least touch on in a small little window of opportunity here on the podcast.
Yeah, unfortunately, this round it's not really much RPGs. I don't think there's any, and it's getting more tricky, honestly, to kind of sift through Steam Next Fest as the rise of AI usage in game development is on the rise, and props to at least all the one for Steam being doing the AI disclosures, so it does push and incentivize developers to be more transparent about their game development, and two for the people for the game developers who are being honest and putting those disclosures. Because let's face it, there's probably some developers out there that do implement it in their workflow to some extent, but probably don't disclose it because there are some. It seems like seems to be some real impact, whether it's a mind share, public conversation, the general sentiment, at least in the West, for these games who are using AI in some capacity, some more so than others. There's definitely definitely a gap between like full generative AI usage versus ones that like are using it in like more the programming side. Not to say that like it's whether it's more acceptable or not. It's it's still shaking out in that regard. But as these Steam Next Fests are going on, more and more of these games are having that AI content disclosure, and a good chunk of them are like using generative AI in a large capacity, which is like obviously something that I don't drift into. But it's up to people on that one. So for all of these, as far as I know, don't implement AI in them, and certainly don't have the disclosure on them. So I have definitely some faith that like the games that I'm about to like that I find cool on here are genuine about their development in that regard. The first one that really caught my eye is this game called Hyper Bun Buster Rocket Hammer Action. It's an arcade game that is a bit of a Bomberman plus Bump Combat East, where you have these arcade stages and you are playing this girl that has a big ass hammer, and there are enemies in each section, and when you bump into them, you basically prime them like bombs, like in Bomberman. So when you hit them again, they rocket towards like the vector that whether it's up, down, left, or right, depending on where you're hitting them. They slide across and trigger a bomb reaction that obviously kills enemies within that bomb reaction, which the more enemies that you hit, the more your score multiplier goes up. Your score multiplier is constantly going down, so maintaining that chain and getting more score is part of the fun. of it. It controls very well. It's definitely one of the standout games that's like, wow, this is one of those games that I will buy day one because it is so fun to play. That's Hyper Bun Buster Rocket Hammer Action. A very, very good demo that I recommend people playing if they like that arcade style gameplay. The next one that really caught my eye is called Hyper Detonator. And that is a game that is like not so much a bullet hell, but it's like a twin stick shooter that is very simplistic in art design wise, but the way that you engage it is very fun. It's like it definitely has like this I'd say a medicinal virus antibacteria theme going onto it, where like the enemies have some sort of like mutations on them, and you want and those are their weak points. So if, like we target those weak points on these targets, they trigger like a bomb explosion on them, so you can take out chunks of them. The more you hit their weak points, and they have this sort of like as you're killing them, they like sort of like disintegrate and morph into like smaller chunks until you completely destroy them. That is a very cool art style. Also plays very well. It has like the Gradius style upgrade system also, where there are cubes that spawn. So like as you're collecting more of them, the more that your weapon upgrades. But unlike Gradius, where you latch on and lock in an upgrade, this weapon upgrade is constantly degrading over time through an in-game timer. So you constantly wanna keep on collecting those cubes to maintain get that upgraded state of weapon in it. Just a very cool demo as well. Those are the two that are like that really impressed me. The other two games that I was able to try that I enjoyed a lot was Blades and Battles, and that's like a beat 'em up, side scroller beat 'em up that all plays well, where you're playing as Arthur or Lancelot. And like I don't know too much about the background, obviously, of the game development itself. But what I did play was you, you could play it like a combo focused game. Has a lot of like combo options. It's definitely a game that like I recommend reading the manual before playing because it doesn't do a lot of like in-game tutorialization. It's one of those games. It's like, hey, read the manual, see what your options are. You're very mobile in it. You have a dash and air dash that you can go use, and you can use that both horizontally and vertically. So you can use that dodge to switch lanes in that regard. And also, there's like an air launcher. You can do up to 3 actions in the air, etc., etc. There's like a mana system that you can use to like execute like special moves in it, and maintain like the combo juggle state on things. There's also like one of like the bosses in the demo is like a 2-for-1 boss, where I was able to like maintain a juggle state on them and then reset them on their wake up to a juggle state. So I was able to like as long as I was able to like keep them clumped together at the very start, it was like a very easy boss battle for one of those, which is really funny. So that was fun. There's also one that is a re-release of a 1999 PS1 game that was only released in Japan. It's called 70s Robot Anime Geppy-X. That's the entire title. 70s Robot Anime Geppy-X. This was originally developed by Aroma in Japan, but it's now being re-released with the developer Implicit Conversions and published by Blissbrain. It's one of those shmup bullet hells that's horizontal, and it's very much in the style of like Super Robot anime series, where they actually have like animated scenes interstitched into the gameplay itself, and it's a pretty like demanding game in the sense that like you take control of like this transformable robot that's like Getter Robo, where it has 3 forms, and you can freely switch between these 3 forms in combat. And during the transformation of those, your hitbox is invincible. So the enemy projectiles flood up the screen really fast. So you have to be mindful of all the states of what gives you invincibility to kind of traverse through safely. It's not a game where like if you get hit once, you die. You do have like a life meter and armor meter where it'll go down if you get hit. So you can tank a good chunk of hits, but obviously once it goes down, you lose a life, etc. In that regard, each of the 3 forms of this robot that you're controlling has a main weapon and sub weapon that you collect power ups to power them up. And the cool part is for bosses, it doesn't tell you exactly what you need to do, but there are special animated like finishers if you get the final hit on a boss with like the right form of robot, and it'll show you like this cool anime scene of like them getting stylishly like finished off because you finished them off in the right robot form. And throughout like the whole like demo, like there's like the opening theme and commercials that were like part of the original game. All English subbed in that regard, and it's just like really cool, flashy presentation, and it's a pretty challenging demo as well. So that's a really fun one. And once
What was
again,
the name
like
of that
this
one?
70s style robot anime Geppy-X.
That's the
Um,
title.
That's the entire title. Yes.
Cool.
That was cool. The other 2 that I will get around to, I haven't tried them out as of this recording, is a game called Choo Choo Defenders, and another one that's called Truck Coon is Supporting Me from Another World. I hear those 2 are good as well.
I saw that one. It was it looks like a crazy taxi, but instead you're killing people to send powers to this
Oh,
reincarnated
uh-huh,
isekai world.
uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
it's like
I heard like even though it kind of presents it as sort of memey, like the game mechanics itself is actually pretty fun. So that's kind of the thing that's giving like usually I don't really care much for meme games. They're not like they're in it for a joke, but if they're actually like, hey, like the game mechanics are actually pretty solid and fun, I'll give them a shot, and that's what I hear about it. So you know, but yeah, those are the Steam Next Fest demos that really caught my eye. Once again, none of them are RPGs, but hey, they were pick up and play good fun.
And I think that kind of covers us for most of the Games Talk section, as well as many of the articles that we've kind of already shouted out. Throughout that section, we talked about the Adventures of Elliot review, technical and preview, and walkthrough. We talked about the Endless Ragnarok YouTube video, the preview there, and the interview. We talked about Gothic remake. We have a few other previews that have gone up on the site coming out of SGF. Adam has done some of them that he'll be able to speak to. But another one is for a game that Scott was able to see over at SGF, and that is EverQuest Legends. This is not something that I know much about, but it is an online game in the spirit of the original, but like kind of more streamlined for in terms of streamlined is my word, not theirs. For single solo play or small groups, my understanding is that's the
Yeah,
main
so I
difference between
can
like EverQuest one.
I can
Okay,
take
go ahead.
this. Yeah, so I talked to this dev team at GDC and I posted a kind of a hands-off preview then. They actually invited
Mhm.
me to like talk to them again about the game, but just because of we had a really busy schedule, I had to turn them down because I was just like, "Hey, we just spoke a few months ago. Um, we don't really have time to speak again." So, but Scott hadn't talked to him yet, and so Scott had the opportunity to talk to him about like because they've had the open beta since GDC, and so they have that feedback now about the testing to the game, what people think of it, and they did announce that the game is launching on July 28th. So what it is it pretty much is intentionally meant to be like a streamlined version of EverQuest. Like if you were to try, you can play if you want to. If you really want to, you can download EverQuest, get a subscription, and play original EverQuest. Now it's not like the original version anymore because it's been like updated in the 25, 30 years that it's been around. How long has it been around? A long time. But this version is meant to be like, okay, we're going to go back to the basics. It looks like classic EverQuest, like the original version of classic EverQuest, but now it's something that you can play on your own time. You don't need to party up. You don't need to team up. You don't need to find a static. You can just play it. And they've
But
added.
this is one thing that I missed that maybe is obvious and I wasn't paying attention, but it is a subscription game.
Yes, it is.
That's one thing I didn't catch. Like it is and I went to the website to try to learn a little bit about this. Like I guess Daybreak Games, the developer, um, was well, I guess they're the publisher of Legends, but they're the custodians of EverQuest 1 and 2 at the moment.
Just so you know, Daybreak Games used to be called, or they like changed ownership. It used to be Sony Online Entertainment, but now they're Daybreak Games. That's like the same thing, more or less.
But it looked like they have some subscription options where it's like, if with this option you could play EverQuest 1 or 2 or maybe Legends. But Legends on its own, I guess, is $10 a month. To me, it just feels like that's fine. Plenty of games have launched and been very successful with subscription service. It just feels like a little bit anachronistic. Like, oh yeah, I got a new game releasing with a subscription service attached to it. Because a lot of times nowadays it's tied into like premium subscription, or like it's free to play, but then you can get like a premium battle pass, or you can opt into it. But to have it here, like, nope, it's just a boilerplate vanilla subscription. It's like, oh, interesting. That feels kind of a little bit classic in that sense, but maybe that fits for a game like this. So Scott was able to put up a preview from the most recent time hands-on with EverQuest Legends, talking a little bit about how raid difficulty works with the solo and small groups, things like that. They talk about how they're looking at games like Diablo for inspiration on how they ramp up the challenge for a game that can be played multiplayer, but also is often played as a solo experience. And then, like you said, did get a full release date announced for July 28th. Though I guess if you pre-order, you can access the beta throughout the month of July. And then, Adam, the last two previews here are two games that you got to look at Summer Game Fest. You put up articles taking a look at Crimson Moon and Petal Runner. So I don't know if there's one or both of those they want to speak to, or like give us the highlights about what you're able to see at SGF for those two games.
I can kind of combine these together because both of these games are games I previewed in the past, and both of these games sort of have a there's a bright spot, but also a spot that I'm like not so bright on. So both of these previews are kind of like, they're both formatted very similarly, where it's like, I like this, but I didn't like this. Crimson Moon, I once again, just like EverQuest Legends, I spoke to the development team at GDC, talked to them about the game. That was shortly after it was announced. Crimson Moon is a kind of a AA action RPG mission-based game. It was announced at a Sony State of Play in February. It's got like this sort of like red color, crimson obviously, hell heaven kind of art style. You play as a half angel called a Nephilim. It's from the development team at Probably Monsters. The whole idea to the game is or to the production, I should say, is it's meant to be like not a gigantic AAA, behemoth of a game. It's meant to be more like mid-size, smaller scope, manageable, mid-range sort of game.
And maybe I'm misinterpreting, but they're really framing it as like this is a 2-player game. It doesn't have to be, but that's like,
yeah, that's a big component
how they're
of
framing it.
So what I think is good about this game, when I played the demo at Summer Game Fest, is I think it feels right. Like, it's hard to describe in words what I mean by that, but when you swing a weapon, there's like a certain, like, the animation of you swinging a weapon, how it accelerates into an enemy, it's intuitive. It makes sense. It doesn't feel floaty. It feels right when it hits the enemy. There's an appropriate sound effect that it doesn't feel like you're swinging at air. It doesn't feel like you're swinging at a sponge. You feel like you're making contact. You hear it, you feel it, and the animations make sense. The timing is intuitive, and I'm like, okay, this feels good to play, and like that's important. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't feel floaty. It makes sense. The one part about it that I think maybe could be improved a little bit is the camera control, but that's also one of the things you could probably just very well get used to once you play it for quite a bit. So that feels fine. The part of the game that I'm like very unsure about and even a little bit confused about is like the larger structure of the game. And so they describe it as a mission-based game, which to me, that's like, okay, that's fine. It feels a bit old school, but, games used to have, like you just do missions in like a sequence and you can maybe replay a mission to get more stats or loot or drops or whatever. But then they also describe it as roguelike. And I even asked them at GDC, like, what do you mean by roguelike? And at the time, they were kind of like, well, there's going to be some like passive boons or run-based bonuses that you get, but we're kind of like, we're still working it out. I'm like, okay, so do you know what it is or not? And then here, as I'm playing through this mission, this has become pretty commonplace, I feel, where you get through partway through the mission and you find like a power up and it's like choose one of three, you know, like 3 different options show up and you have to pick one that fits your build, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's very roguelite.
Right.
At least,
and it's like, okay, so
modern
this
roguelite. The Hades roguelite.
is that all they mean by roguelike? Is that you in a mission you can get like a boon? What is the permanent progression? Is there progression that's not permanent besides the boons? So not only just that, but like the level design itself. Here's the thing. It kind of felt like randomized or maybe procedurally generated stitched together rooms, but I'm not sure if it actually was procedurally generated stitched together rooms or if that's just what it felt like, which is like either way it didn't feel good. A good action RPG without a map. This game does not have a map, but when you don't have a map, the game itself, both like structurally and aesthetically, should kind of guide you where you need to go, or at least like reward your wanderlust. But here, I kind of just felt like a aimless maze, and like maybe that's the point. I don't know, but it was just kind of like it didn't feel good to like navigate. And it was also kind of dull, to be honest. So like, okay, there's only one level. But I didn't really like the map, like the level design of the map, even though I felt fine fighting the enemies within the map. And then I have like no idea how the actual like character building, character progression, loot system, stats, how any of that works, which I think is like crucially important for a game like this. Like, how do you build your character? What sort of classes can you build? Like, what does loot even work like? And how does this fit into like the roguelike question mark structure? So that's kind of what I meant by like, I come away that I'm uncertain, that I kind of came away with more questions than answers. Like, I don't have any idea how any of this works. And when I talked to the developers behind the game at GDC about it, they were also a little bit like wishy-washy on it. Like they didn't know, or they hadn't settled it down yet. So yeah, that's kind of how that was my takeaway on that one. Petal Runner.
And this game has a release.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, it doesn't.
It
just says 2026.
I forgot to mention this. Crimson Moon comes out in September, supposedly, and it's just kind of like, okay, I want to be generous. I like to give these sorts of games a chance, like a try. But September is like the hardest month to make room for a game like this when there's so many other things coming out that month. We were just talking before the podcast about some of the games that we wanted to play, like Blood of Dawnwalker or, Onimusha or Trails or Fire Emblem. All these games are coming out in September. And it's like, I don't know, man. Good luck, like genuinely, for this. So now I understand that some of the things that I kind of was curious about are hard to show in a demo, right? In a small slice. This is one of the things where it's like, there's been a lot of discussion about reviews on my timeline lately, or this is one of the things where it's like, I kind of want to read a review of this game. Like, what do people think about the structure of how this works? Because I have no idea. Anyways, Petal Runner, that's the other one. Petal Runner is kind of a totally different thing. It is an indie game. It's a pixel art kind of, they call it solar punk, which I've never heard. I'm not sure I've ever heard that word before. Solar punk, pixel art.
I've had.
Which I guess means just like bright colors, like pastel, like bright oranges and pinks.
It's also, I've also heard. I don't know about Petal Runner, but solar punk is also. You know how like cyberpunk has like a visual theme that you associate with it, but also kind of like a tonality theme of being dystopian, of being like people are self-interested, of being solar punk's the opposite, where it's like this is a society that has grown to be, again, this is my personal interpretation, like harmonious, in tune with nature. People are generous and nice to each other. Like things have gone well. This is the good timeline. Is how I see it.
I guess that matches with the bright color palette. It's a cozy game. Yeah. And I actually spoke with the developer, like the founder of the studio, this indie studio, which has like 2 main people on it. And he told me directly, like, this is a cozy game. Like that's the vibe they're going for. When you at first glance, it looks like Pokemon. It doesn't look like exactly like a Game Boy game. It's definitely more like involved than what a Game Boy is capable of. But at a glance, it looks like Game Boy Pokemon. It's got like that bright color palette.
I like how Mina looks like a Game Boy Color game, even though like under the hood.
Yeah, it's definitely not right. It's like Pokemon. It's like Digimon in that you have like a creature companion who can talk to you. So like Digimon, they talk to you like they're real characters. They're housed in a Tamagotchi-looking like device called a leash. There is no battles. There are no battles. There's no training. So it's not like a monster trainer. The main like gameplay of the game is you're delivering these animals, which are called Hana pets, to like new families. So you're kind of like a Hana pet delivery service. And there's a story that's involved with this and all that, in terms of like people who want to use Hana pets for other means or whatnot. And from what I could tell, seems sensible for a game like this. To have like an appropriate conflict for a cozy game kind of feel. But the one thing I came away from this game, so when I played this last year at Summer Game Fest 2025, I actually wrote in my preview at the time, like, it's trying to be charming, but it comes across as corny sometimes with some of the dialogue. And I kind of was feeling generous at the time, like maybe it was just maybe I'm not in the right mindset. Maybe I'm just kind of overthinking it. It's just a small demo, no big deal, right? But when I started playing the new demo this time, which is a totally new area with totally new like dialogue, I was feeling the same way, and I was just like, oh, maybe it wasn't just a mindset thing at the time. This is just how the tone of the game. It kind of comes across the dialogue as like quippy, trying to be funny, kind of like jokey, almost feels like millennial humor, like LOL random type stuff. And it's just like, it didn't feel good. And I was just like, man, if this is kind of already kind of like giving me secondhand embarrassment just playing the demo, I don't know what I'm going to feel if I'm playing like the full game. Maybe maybe it is a mindset thing. Maybe I just need to get used to it or whatever, but it's kind of something that I felt twice playing two different demos. So I kind of wrote on that. My preview is called "Sometimes Feels More Corny Than Charming," and that was my takeaway.
I mean, if you felt it twice on two different occasions, it's probably like something. That's a genuine opinion at that point.
For example, as an actual specific example, this is really, really. I think this is actually in the Summer Game Fest demo, which is slightly different than the demo I played at. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. I think this is actually in the Steam Next Fest demo, not the demo I played at Summer Game Fest, where at the very beginning of the game, one of the characters says something like, "We need to get out of here, lickety split." And then one of the other characters is like, "I'm not licking anything." And it's just like, I get it. They sound similar. And it's like, whatever, fine. But then they like go right back to that joke like 2 minutes later, like, again, no licking. And it's just like, come on, guys. Like, this is not funny.
This is not clever. Yeah, I get it.
So yeah, we got two different previews, right? With similar kind of framing.
Crimson Moon has the right feel, but it's the rest of the game you're uncertain about, talking about, how many aspects are roguelike and how many aspects are mission based. And then Petal Runner, decent vibes, writing seems like it hasn't quite endeared to you. Which is a valid response. I think that covers all of the different articles that we have up on the site, many this week across the reviews, previews, interviews, and all of those. So if you go to rpgsite.net and hit the articles tab, you should be able to see pretty much all of them. And I think there's still a few more in the can, or in the holster, so to speak, in terms of some Summer Game Fest things. So we'll probably hopefully wrap up on some of those next week as we get into the midsummer months. In terms of news, like we kind of said at the very start, finally a week that's a little bit quieter on news, which is absolutely fine by us because it's been hectic. But we do have a few updates. Of course, we had like a Persona 4 revival broadcast that I think at the time of recording just finished like a day ago. Maybe I'll just start with that. So obviously Persona 4 revival was first shown off a bit ago. We got the release information over SGF, but then the a longer like 20-minute broadcast was showing some of its new animations, new battle system features. We got some details about some new voice casting and all of that. So I did read through both Mikhail and Kite's news posts here about what was shown, but I didn't actually watch the broadcast myself. So did Josh, Adam, or others? Did any of you actually watch this broadcast? Because I can speak to it secondhand, but not like I wasn't there
did not.
when it was airing.
I watched it as it was airing. Like I think the big thing out of it that was new is like people finally got to hear like some of the new music arrangements. Obviously, it's a new vocalist. Was it Shikoko Harada, the original vocalist? I forgot the new vocalist's name, and it was like done much in the same vein as like Persona 3 Reload, right? Except Lotus Juice also came back for that one. And it'll take some time to grow, I think, for a lot of the new tracks, the new rearrangements on them. It's like, for me, it's like, obviously Persona 4's OST is very special for people who played that, so it's gonna be hard to like rewire my brain to, get accustomed to the new rearrangements on that one. There's also, I guess I should do a correction on what I thought was like gonna be a new feature in this game, where you still have the advantage strikes where you can hit the opponent to get the advantage on them. It's just they're also adding the guarding on it to get advantage strikes. So they're adding a new layer of just like getting the advantage on an opponent where you have to actively try not to get the advantage on them. So now they're, instead of like going up to them and hitting them, you can also just stand still and wait for them to come to you and guard and hit them and still get advantage, which is, I don't know, frankly stupid, but okay, whatever. On that one, this other feature that I don't know yet if this is actually like going to be a thing or not, or if there's just like the way that they film the footage, but when you're traversing through the dungeon in some of these clips that they showed off in the broadcast, there seems to be like a gold trail that you can follow to see the way forward in these linear corridor maps. It's sort of the way that it presents is much like Scoutflies in Monster Hunter World, except the dungeons themselves are linear corridors. So if you're ever lost in where to go next, I guess this is a way for you to find the way forward and where you're supposed to go. Or is this just like the way that the footage is being shown? Maybe there's like a Golden Hands trail, maybe, but they never explicitly said what these golden trails are. Whether that's just like the film footage of someone following a golden hand, or there's actually like a new feature of like, if you need us to map the way forward in these linear maps that you are exploring in the dungeon, you can go follow this golden trail, which sure, I guess. Other than that, they reviewed like all the new battle features, the new primetime feature, the Baton Pass. They showed off some new footage of like some like the summer camp events, and stuff.
Yeah, I'm honestly losing track of the things they've added, because like Baton Pass, Send Flying, which I guess allows you to spread status ailments, Prime
Yeah,
Time.
that's a new
We
thing.
talked about
Yeah.
that. That's the
Mhm.
meter that allows you to use abilities without MP. And I remember someone just saying like, I forget if it was in a podcast or if it was just in a voice chat or what, but it's just like, man, you have a lot of tools at your disposal, and even more now in this remake in terms of
Mhm.
streamlining. Again, that word again.
Like stream, like I don't know if it's like streamline or just like, hey, if you really wanted to sleepwalk your way through an RPG, you can
All I'm
very
hearing
easily, more
is
so than ever.
all I'm hearing is played on hard mode.
Yeah.
Even then, yeah, but it's like, but even then, like like Persona 3 Reload was not hard. I mean, it's harder difficulties. So I don't know. It's like you can even hear it from Wada himself, the producer on this. Is like, you want to make this as stress free as possible. It's like, okay, they've smoothened out the experience to make it as stress free as possible. It's like, okay, well, that's very apparent. Mission complete. You showed it in Persona 5. You showed it in Persona 3 Reload. You're gonna show it again with this. What else could you say now? But I get it. I mean, a good chunk of probably majority of the audience doesn't want a challenging game on these, which is that's what it is now. I'm hoping Persona 6 is a challenging game, but I don't have my hopes.
Max
I really
social links in 2 days. No sense of progression.
I don't really have my hopes up on, like, I think expecting any sense of challenge in Persona 6 feels like a fool's
I don't.
errand.
I don't really care about the challenge. I just need them to get rid of the calendar system. I am sick of waiting like 10 years for something new, and they keep doing the calendar system because it's so popular.
I wrote up a feature 10 eons ago when Kyle was still here writing for the site, and the first thing I wanted was in a theoretical new Persona is to get rid of the calendar system, and so many people got so mad at that, and people are still probably going to get mad when you ask for a new Persona without the calendar system. I wish it was gone. I wish it wasn't in metaphor, but it is. But
You know what? I'm going to be spicy. I think that there's not enough RPGs that have like time as a resource, and I'm glad that Persona and like Atlas in general keeps using that. Until you got rid of it, I'm glad that at least one studio is keeping on doing it for now.
It inflates the gameplay count needlessly. This is why the Persona series became like a 20 to 30 hour RPG, generously after that, to like now 50 to 60 hours minimum because of that calendar system, and a lot of it is not utilized well. Like Persona 3 has a lot of dead months because they're waiting for the next full moon for it. So for me, it's just like they have not yet really
concept versus execution, right?
Yeah, they have not really justified the calendar system in terms of like inflating the gameplay count needlessly. Like I just feel like it.
You could metaphor on concept I thought was really, really cool, but then the execution was like, oh, okay.
I think the problem is that they designed the pacing of the calendar system for like the lowest common denominators for people that are going to struggle to get things done within that time limit. So they make it very lenient. Now, it's not a problem for us. Like both of us, before like Metaphor even came out, we got 100% no guides. It's not a problem, but for people that maybe it's their first time playing an RPG like that, where the time limit is something they have to consider, it's like, I get what you're saying. I agree to an extent, but I understand why it is the way it is.
I mean, like I said, this is not like these. A lot of games anymore are not designed for people who want challenge in their RPG, and that's just like the kind of the reality of it. So I totally get it. I'm not the target audience. They should go for what will sell the most. But it's like I am kind of tired of like just sleepwalking through RPGs, and would like to play ones that are challenging as a default, not something that I have to like
Gothic
crank
1
up.
remake.
Maybe,
Even though sometimes that's challenging for reasons that aren't quite fair or aren't quite intended.
Yeah.
Also, one thing we did get, and I know that Kite is still detailing this out as information rolls in, but we're getting some details about the new voice actors, both on the English and Japanese side. And I'm looking at the list here, and a lot of these names are new to me, but some of them are kind of familiar. It looks like Adam might have a good finger on this. A lot of English voices in like the Hoyoverse games, those actors are appearing here. Like the protagonist is a voice in Zenless Zone Zero. His name is Nazi Tarsha.
I've seen a lot of excitement for this person, even though I'm not familiar with this actor.
Well, he says he's Gaul in Monster Hunter Stories 3.
Well,
So I
played that. He's like a side character in that game, and the voice
okay.
I thought was fine. Like it's one of those voices that like it definitely wasn't bad, but it's like, oh yeah, I guess that was a character in that game, sure.
Yeah, Yukiko is Brianna Knickerbocker, who did Donna and Beast Lacrimose of Donna. Also has a Normaya and Granblue.
I think Brianna Knickerbocker has got one of those like really, really unique voices that it's easy to like point out. Like, yep, that's Brianna again. But if
I think of English Rem.
Yeah, in the right, and I think in the right role she can nail it. And I think Yukiko could be a good fit.
And then Kite also has, and Mikhail has helped as well on some of the Japanese cast. So I'm not familiar with these. I'm not sure if Josh or
the
Zhao
Japanese
are.
cast is unchanged.
Yeah,
it's
it's unchanged.
Original. Okay. They even got like Yukiko's VA, Ami Koshimitsu, to do like an interview, and she's like, "Man, it's been 20 years. Has it been that long?" It's like.
Well, I got confused because the phrasing here is the Japanese cast revealed so far is as follows, and then the second sentence says they're reprising their roles. Like, oh, okay, now I see. So, okay.
Yeah, they were like talking about it, and she's like amazed about like the graphics and all this stuff, and it's like it's been so long, and she looks like she hasn't aged a day, which is like crazy, man. It's like you think about it. Oh.
Yeah,
so we only have some of the cast, but it's revealed throughout the next couple of weeks. Go ahead, Josh.
It's even like the main character's like uncle. I already forgot his name. Like his seiyuu, his Japanese seiyuu, like passed away some time back, and they're still using his same voice lines, and that's kind of common practice over there
So I think it covers it for the new details from Persona 4 Revival's like little broadcast that I had this week. On the Square Enix side of things, here's an update that I don't know if we were expecting this. This is a game that released last year, Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. It got its 1.5 version update last week. To my knowledge, this wasn't announced or known of, but
Square Enix just does this sometimes. They have like these like significant patch updates, like at least 6 months after, if not more than a year after the game comes out. So this is what, 9 months. Like they did this
yeah,
with like Triangle Strategy. They did this with like Dragon Quest
Yep.
3 HD 2D. They just kind of do this sometimes. They have like these late updates. They added New Game Plus. Apparently, this is like a very basic New Game Plus where enemies do not. Some people like this, some people don't. You get to keep all your stats and levels and whatever on a second playthrough, but the enemies are not like ratcheted up at all. So you're gonna like plow right through them in New Game Plus.
Oh, it gives me another opportunity to farm a javelin too, and
Yeah, people are like, you can get more Genji equipment, you can get more javelins, or that one super good shield or whatever it's called. They added a chart, and this is one of those things I'm only like vaguely familiar with. There's like a Zodiac Compatibility feature in the game that affects like certain stats of your characters. And in the past, this was all like, I believe it was all found kind of through experimentation and like evidence in terms of like this is how this must work, at least to some degree, in terms of like when damage is increased or decreased. And now there's just like a chart where if you have certain zodiac signs that like are involved with each other, you get like a good compatibility where you get like 125% of your stat, or if it's bad compatibility, it's 75% of your stat, and other like components too. And I guess it's like literally just charted out now.
There's also just some like more not quite under the hood, but just more like technical updates. Like there's an update to remove all equipment. There's an update that I guess it says something like if you change the camera position, it'll persist throughout the battle now. Like, oh, they must have just had it like where it would reset itself.
I guess, yeah.
It says job unlock conditions are now displayed more clearly for currently locked jobs. So like, okay, I didn't play to know exactly how it was shown, but they've tweaked what that is.
The Zodiac chart stuff is cool. That is definitely something that like it's hard to explain to people that it exists, but this is a admirable way to surface it.
So a cool update of Final Fantasy Tactics for the Ivalice Chronicles that released last year.
I do wonder if how significantly this will bump up sales like in China, Korea, because it does add tech support for them. But I wonder if there's like, going to be a significant sales increase because of that.
I don't know, if I was Korean, I would appreciate that I could play this game in Korean.
Yeah, I don't like I don't know exactly like how like what the legacy of FF Tactics are in those territories.
Another article that Kite's put together. This is a real cool, just kind of resource, even though we've spoken to it. This is on Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. Of course, we got a release date and a new trailer and some discussion out of it from the Nintendo Direct that aired at the back part of SGF. We even talked about here about the 4 different protagonists who now, thanks to Kite's article, we have the official art and description, like the bio for, and even though like a Japanese voice actor, these have been shared on Japanese social media, and Kite basically is just kind of cataloging them and putting them in written format.
Kite did this for Engage also. It's one of those things that like if you're like in the Fire Emblem fan base and like really deep into like those fandoms, these people like catalog all the stuff. Like even if a character shows up for 2 seconds in a trailer, they're like, "Ooh, that character must be related to that character, and they're probably part of this kingdom, and they probably do all this, and blah 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 blah." But anyways, Kite basically takes the official like revealed like character bios that are usually on Japanese Twitter or Japanese like website, and just kind of what's been revealed so far, kind of like cataloging them all. So far, it's just like the 4 protagonists. But he did this for Engage, where he kept updating it over time with all the characters that were revealed over time.
Well, I remember last week or whatever it was, like, what's that second guy's name? Alucard. Like, nope, it's Dietrich. And I can tell because I've Kite's article reference that gives us his art, his bio, his Japanese VA, and everything. So Kite's gonna, I presume, just keep that updated, keep it bumped as new characters come into like the media release, news cycle. from here.
Like it's always funny, just like all this like neat stuff about Fire Emblem, but it's only just in the Japanese social media account. Like there's just no interest
we
in
don't know English
surfacing these.
VAs. We don't. Yeah, it's in. Yeah, they could. You think they'd be leveraging like, hey, maybe engaged in and hit the bar. I'm not actually sure where it ended sales wise compared to Three Houses, but like you'd think they'd be like championing this as like a big fall release for them. But I guess we'll see.
Chow,
If
I
they
know,
ramp up,
I know you've been following these based on like the mechanics that you've like seen so far from them. Have you has any of it swayed you to change your starting protagonist in this?
Nope. I am starting with either Letta or Alucard. Sorry, it's either those two. Kai looks
It's gonna be
lame.
forever Alucard. Never gonna be his name.
It's like Kai looks lame. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna save my dad. And if Fire Emblem show up, your dad's probably dead. So
I like Letta just because like she's like the most unique archetype compared to them. The fact that she's like a bard, like an instrumentalist, it's pretty cool.
I was gonna mention like Leda is like based off of like Chow's comment right now. The people like this are very easy connecting the dots of like, oh, they mentioned a certain incident that happened to her 5 years ago. Then you go to favorite things, and the first thing of her favorite things is memories of both parents. And it's like, man, I really wonder what happened 5 years ago to Leda.
Oof.
Anyways, I'm just going through like the Nintendo of America like Twitter account, and like I think they like mentioned like the Fire Emblem like trailer, and that was about it. And we don't have like an English, like I don't think there's not an English just like Fire Emblem account like there is in Japan. I don't think. Yeah, there's an English Fire Emblem Heroes account. That's not the same thing. So I'm basically just like, so like Japan has like these dedicated Fire Emblem accounts that kind of go through all these little bit like small things, new characters, like small adjustments or whatever. But yeah, English, no, not much.
Okay, it'll come out and everyone will be at the same starting point. It's not like the Japanese release a year in advance, and it's like, oh man.
Here's another update that I'm not sure anyone on the podcast can relate to, but I know other people like Josh too and Hayes might. Assassin's Creed Shadows, which of course released early last year, just got its final update, which it seems pretty meaty as I scroll down like all the things they added for this. They've added like story quests, they added a new game mode, they've added just other improvements to like the hub. But
apparently they finished the story finally.
That's yeah. Apparently, like the new story quest is, this is just what I've heard, like a really good ending, or at least a better ending than what was originally provided. Because again, Assassin's Creed Shadow has the two protagonists, Yasuke and Naue. Is it Naue? What was the other protagonist's name?
Naue. Yeah.
Naue. Oh, I did get it right. Yeah, Yasuke and Naue, and so a new story quest, basically, I guess, is supposed to wrap up those two character story arcs. Apparently, it's for those that are really in the fandom. They're like, hey, this is actually pretty good. So for a final update, that's cool to hear. It's interesting though that it's like, all right, now if you played this game, you didn't get the complete story at the beginning, but I guess that's just really not uncommon these days.
That's so sad to like say. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
This game released not this March, last March, and now it finally finished up its main story, like an actual complete ending, more than a year after it released, like a year and a half after it released. Cool. At least they didn't charge you money for it, like Asura's Wrath.
Mm-hmm. Or Prince of Persia 2008.
Yeah.
Which some people think compromised the ending of that game.
I remember it was like it was like a weaker ending in some words.
And that's it for updates. I think just to wrap this podcast out, we'll just have a couple of announcements like on available demos and some upcoming release dates. Obviously, it's Steam Next Fest, so not all of these are tied to Steam Next Fest, but I guess it's just that sort of year. Echoes of Aincrad, this is the Sword Art Online game that's releasing next month and now has a demo available on all platforms. Embers of the Uncrowned, this is that Nexon MMO that got announced not that long ago. It was like in late March, I believe. Looks like, no, it looks like late April. and now has a playable demo. They already announced that this was coming, so we kind of detailed it back when they announced what was playable in the demo, where they said like, how do they word it? 480 minutes of content instead of hours. Thought that was interesting. So if someone's got to play Embers of the Uncrowned and see if they get all 480 minutes worth. But I'm curious to see the response on that. Summer Road is also a new game that has a demo available on PC through the Steam Next Fest. As for full releases, Dokapon 321 Super Collection is coming to PC on June 29th. Looks like it's already available on Switch. Let's see here. DragonSword Awakening. I don't remember a lot about this game except that it's kind of like a spin-off from like a Korean live service game.
It's
But
it, it's
DragonSword
like yeah, it's basically a sequel to a mobile game called Dragon's Nest. It was planned to be like a gacha game, but due to issues with its original publisher, they spun it off, and it's now like a real premium game, not a gacha game anymore.
Cool.
So yeah, so it's like go. Sorry for cutting you off on the news. Go completely.
No. No, like if I don't have the context for something, I encourage you all to jump in. But yeah, that is going to be launching on PC in late July on the 23rd.
Yeah, apparently people really like the demo, and there's gonna be like obviously more fixes based on like feedback. The only thing they're gonna like do for DLC, I believe, is like skins for the characters. But in terms of like actual like game content, it seems to be like a full beginning and ending to it.
Looks neat. I don't know if I'll play it, but I honestly want to support more like companies that make gacha games, making them real video games. So.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like comparing this like it's like Genshin Offline in some regards. But there's like multiplayer support for raids as well, like in the end game too, if you want to play with others.
You know what? I'll add it to my wish list. Maybe it'll be a fun time.
If I have time for it, I definitely want to check it out. But
there's a demo. There's a demo.
At least it's July and not September.
It's true.
And then also speaking of July, and I believe this is also a Korean developer, Project Cloud Games, releasing the Relic First Guardian is releasing on July 31st for PlayStation 5 and PC. This is like a Korean action RPG. The main thing, as I was reading through the press release here, that I thought was interesting is that instead of traditional levels, you strengthen by earning passive effects by collecting like 70 relics. So that's how again, I'm just kind of pulling this out of the press information, so it's very high level. But you progress by gathering these relics, which make you stronger. So not just grinding EXP, but finding objects in the world is how I understood this. Hence the title, the Relic First Guardian. So another July release that could be interesting. The gameplay kind of looks a little bit muddy.
Pushing through the episode the game title and not changing them. I don't know if it'll work out, but
yeah, the Relic First Guardian is kind of a clunky title.
Yeah,
they believe in the game title. Godspeed. I hope it's a good game. It looks cool.
Yeah. Outward 2 was supposed to enter early access either this month or next.
Like early July.
It looks like early July. Nine Dots has basically said we are pushing early access to 2077.
2077?
And sorry, 2027.
Holy crap, 2077.
I just mumbled. Basically, they're saying we don't want to push something out that we don't think is up to par. We don't want to stubbornly stick to the plan at the detriment of the game. So they're taking their time, which if they have the financial ability to support that, then hard to say that that's a bad decision.
Yeah. Hey, that's the power of self-publishing.
Yeah, when we posted this news about this delay, we immediately got a reply from someone as someone who played the open beta or the beta. They needed to do this. It was, I guess, very evident that it was this is too early for even early access. This needs more time. So,
and good on the developers to not just rush through early access and just fix it during early access. No, we want to make a better impression during early access.
Yep. There are definitely sometimes developers they go into early access and it's not even near like a finish line, not even close to being completed. And it's like, yeah, I guess from some definition, early access can be however early as you want, but like it's gotta resemble something of a final product, right?
Yeah, ideally, though sometimes exploited and abused.
And lastly, Quartet, which released in August last year, is working on a PlayStation port, though we don't have a release window. It's very much when it's ready, though it will add some new endgame content, which will be included in an update to the existing PC and Switch version. That's definitely gonna. I don't really keep like a formal backlog, but if I did, Quartet would be on it because I've heard fun things. And that covers us for what we had on the docket for this week's episode of the Tetracast. As I kind of typically do, I'm like wondering like what are we looking at next week to wrap out a January here. Sorry, June, different J month.
Yeah, I don't know what's coming out next week.
Yeah, I'm taking a look. Not there. I mean, there's like Guild Wars Reforged on mobile, Citizen Sleeper on Switch 2. So some cool stuff, but in terms of new releases, but July 9th, first listing that we have on our release calendar for July for RPGs, Granblue Fantasy Relink, Endless Ragnarok, and then a Veritas Tales, Witch of the Dark Castle on the same day. So immediately into things in early July, Echoes of Aincrad, July 10th. So, but yeah, go to rpgsite.net, check out the Millennium Tale Adventures of Elliot review, check out the Gothic 1 Remake review, all the different previews for Endless Ragnarok from Josh, as well as some of the other titles from SGF from Adam and Scott, such as Crimson Moon, Petal Runner, and what was the other one? EverQuest. What was the tag? Legends, like EverQuest Origins. No, not that. EverQuest Legends from Scott. If you listen to this podcast on your podcast service of choice, whatever it is, leave us a like, leave us a rating. We'd love to see those. Search for RPG Site on all the social medias. You should be able to find us. Just search for RPG Space Site. Join the Discord, discord.gg/RPG Site. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us then, stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to y'all later.